If you photograph weddings, then you know it's a do or die. I mean, you've only got one chance to get this right. It's not like a portrait, or it's not like any other really genre of photography apart from an event-driven shoot, that you have to get it done on the day. And if it was up to me, if I was the president of the Photography Association in the world, and I could regulate photography in the wedding industry, I would basically say that you would have to get a license to be a wedding photographer. You have to understand storytelling. You have to be capable of a decent quality of work, understand the culture of wedding that you actually are photographing, and here's a license and now you can go photograph. Of course, that's not the way photography is. We can get a business card designed, mailed to us. We are now a professional photographer. We can open up a business. We can charge what we want, whether it's high, low, whatever it may be, and we can photograph a wedding. So it is a tough gig. Now, I say again that these are the must-have shots, or as I call them, do-or-die shots. Now, one of the very first lessons I learnt from my first and only boss in photography, a guy named Peter Barlow from the Studio Photographers, and it was the first studio that I ever worked for, and only studio I worked for apart from my own. And I knocked on his door and I basically said, I love your work, can I carry your bags? Did that for a year and a half, and with no camera in my hand, and then I started to shoot my own weddings through the studio. Of course, shot my first wedding at the age of 20, now I'm 46, so it's been 26 years in the making of what I'm about to tell you. Now, so what I'm going to tell you here, guys, is not really from a, how do I say, here's how you get wow shots, here's how you get all these different things, or talking about lighting and posing. I'm talking about more specifically the kinds of shots that you just have to get, and the ones that people expect, and even if they actually don't ask you. If someone says to you, I just want photojournalism and I don't want any pose shots at all, do not believe them, because I've made that mistake in my, probably twice in my career. And the bride and the groom said, well, where's this shot? The parents said, where is this shot? And so on. So there are going to be some shots that you just have to pose, even if they want a photojournalistic approach. My first boss, Peter, like I mentioned to you, he told me that a shit shot, in his words, a shit shot is better than no shot. In other words, we can all do better with what we do, better lighting, better posing, better composition, whatever. But even if the shot could be better, at least you've got it. And that is really, really important to understand, that there are some shots that you just don't come home without them. In other words, don't leave the wedding until you get these shots. And that's what we're about to tackle right now, is what are the kinds of shots that we just simply have to get, and in which situation, and so on. Now, here's a few, I call them, and as you mentioned, I call rules common denominators, but let's be more factual now. As a fact, as a rule, this is what your mindset should be when you're photographing a wedding. Okay, first of all, you want to tell the story, right? You want to make sure that if someone was not at the wedding and they looked at the photographs, could be the future children of the bride and the groom, it could be someone who wasn't at the wedding, it could be someone who was sick or whatever. Would they know the spirit and the soul of the wedding just by looking at the photographs? Not just how cute the bride and groom are, but the story, the moments between the moments and everything. So the story is important, okay? Flattery. Of course, when we look at a photo of ourselves, the first thing that we do is we critique ourselves. We're all insecure about some things in the way we look. And you look at your photograph of yourself, and if you like it, great, it's a great photograph. So it's very rare that someone who does not like the look of themselves in a photograph, they end up liking that photograph. Now, certainly emotion beats perfection, but we want emotion, but also we want to flatter the bride and the groom. So you'll obviously learn more about that in my posing episodes. So story and flattery are very important. Also, show off things they've spent money on. I know that sounds really obvious, but think about it. Did they spend money on the dress? Okay, would you never photograph the back of the dress? Well, that'd be a mistake, because the bride may have spent a lot of money on those details in the back of the dress, and of course, at least at one point in the wedding day, you didn't get it, so that's a problem. And obviously detail shots, and of course you may know my theory on detail shots, but we'll come to that shortly. Probably the most important is what's meaningful, because there's some brides and grooms who are going to want little intricacies of the day or whatever, or they will not reveal a part of themselves unless you found it or find it, and unless you ask. In other words, who are you closest to? Do you have a soft spot for someone in your family? Who did you grow up with more so as a child? Who are your closest friends? Are there any fun things that you do with your friends? Is there a way that you high five? Is there a way that you hug or whatever? Like, there are certain things that you want to find out. So being meaningful is important. Also, shoot to sell. That's a really, I mean, the must-have shots in a wedding. You should be shooting for a story, for an album, making it difficult for your brides and grooms or your couples to not know where to stop, because I love them all. So shooting to sell is important. So what I do is, and if you go into Shooting to Sell, the channel, so if you go to episode Shooting to Sell, you'll see several episodes where I talk deliberately about that topic and expand on that as well. So in other words, I walk into a room, I see a shot, I photograph it, great, there's my one photograph. Don't think about the album spread until that first photograph is taken. Then I say, what else is going to go with these photographs? Bang. So then I get that series of shots, there's my spread. I will not shoot 50 to hope to get 3. I might shoot 3 or 4 or 5 or 10, and bang, I'm done, and then I'll go to the next story. Now the story, so I call a spread of an album a story, and of course over the overall story as well, but that story has to be good independently, as in look good as a spread in the album, and look different enough to the next spread in some sort of way or fashion. Rather, you would have to consolidate those spreads. In other words, if you've got the bride here laughing, having fun with tungsten lighting on her, then you've got her playing with her veil outside in the sun. Well, that's different. The different colour palette, maybe a different mood. You might have boudoir over here and family shots here. You wouldn't combine those in a spread and so on. So it's really important that we separate those things as well. Also, let's have a look here. Okay, there are some certain questions that you have to ask your couple in terms of the relationships that they have. So, if we go, Melissa, if you can go to the relationships document that we actually send out to our clients, yeah. Let's go through that, okay, and discuss the importance of that as well.
So I think we have it up on the screen now. It's this is a document that Jerry created, and then when we do our pre-wedding meeting with the couple, like we have one today actually for a wedding for next weekend, next week, we're going to go through this form, and it just helps us on the day to make sure that we don't miss any of those family groups, and also not create any awkward family groups. Like if the bride's parents are divorced, we kind of need to know that, so we're not putting them hugging next to each other, if that makes sense. So here's the form. It's 4 pages long. We start with the bride's family. Bride's name, of course, their mom, and then we want to know their parents' names as well, so that we can talk to them and speak to them on a name basis. Are they divorced? If yes, are they in speaking terms? Because sometimes they can't even be in the same photo together, so you need to know those kind of family dynamics. And then if we scroll down, if they are divorced, does the mom have a new partner? Does the dad have a new partner? And what is their name? We have brothers, sisters, their partner's name, children. That way we know who everyone is. We know all of the VIPs at the wedding, who the important people are. We scroll down, grandparents that will be attending. Will they be there? Will they not be there? What are their names? And then we have the same thing for the groom's family. So we have the same list of questions, and we go through the whole groom's family dynamics. And then we scroll down some more, and we come to the wedding party. So we want to know who the best man is the best man married? What's his partner's name? Do they have any children? Because what we're gonna do is, if we have even a little bit of extra time, we're gonna get the best man, his wife, and his kids, and we're gonna do a quick family portrait of them.
And that is Jazz drinking a lot of water right now.
If you hear that in the background, our puppy's thirsty. So we'll get a family portrait of the best man, his wife, and his kids, because that will be a great reprint later on and a little extra sale for our part. Same thing with the maid of honor. We go through the flower girls, the bridesmaids. You get the idea. At the very end, we have sort of an others, important notes or other important people at the wedding that they definitely want to have a photo with. So it could be, the bride was in a sorority, the groom was in a fraternity, they want to get a photo with all of their fraternity brothers, that kind of thing.
Hey buddy, hey.
So we kind of go through and we have a list of all of that stuff so that we know exactly who everyone is.
All right, fantastic. And you might be thinking, well, what is the best way of asking are the parents alive? Because that is a very important question. So probably the most sensitive way of asking a bride and a groom, say, so you speak to the bride, say, Mary, for example, Mary, are your parents still with us? And 9 out of 10 times she'll understand what I'm saying by that. 1 out of 10 is, what do you mean? Well, are they both alive? And then she'll tell you quickly that if they're alive or not. It could be that they're aging or something like that. So you've got to make these notes very, very importantly. And of course, you might even say, do you have grandparents on either side, maternal or paternal grandparents? That's a really important question to ask. So that relationship guide, that's going to help you with your must-have shots. Now, I'll have those documents in my camera bag, and your assistant or whatever, like in our case, Melissa, will often look at it and she'll keep me on track as to who's who. So imagine if Dad passed away just a month ago and his dying wish was that the bride and groom, get married, don't delay on the wedding, and then all of a sudden say, hey, okay, let's get the bride's dad, and then I'll look like a real idiot. So that's a really important thing to keep in mind as well. Okay, so now that we've established all of that, and of course there's a lot more intricacies, but I'm trying to sort of make this simple for you. It's important now that we look at each section. Now, traditionally, I will photograph the grooms first, the groom's coverage first. Now, by the way, guys, just to be sensitive to same-sex weddings, I'll often say bride and groom. This could be bride and bride. This could be a groom and groom. For the sake of the examples I'm going to show you, they are a bride and groom. But just know, of course, we need to be sensitive as to same-sex weddings and different culture weddings and things like that. So, baby, do you want to talk through little sections of each particular coverage, and then I'll show examples of what those mean?
Yeah, for sure. So through the checklist, you mean?
Yep, that'd be great.
All right, so we have a checklist that we go through that Jerry's created just to because so many people asked this very question of why we're doing the broadcast. And so we've pulled it up and we're going to go through, and then Jerry's going to share examples because he does this at every single wedding. And it's not like he has the paper in front of him. Just after doing it for so many years, he's now gotten used to having to do these must-have shots. Yes, you want to do super creative, cool shots that you're going to see in the cover of everything. But the fact of the matter is you got to get these first. If you have extra time, then you can play, but you can't just go in wanting to get the super creative, fun, shots that you think are going to end up in a magazine, because that's not what's going to make the client happy. If you have time, then you can get to those, but bang through all of these first. So we'll start here with the groom's coverage, because that's typically what we will do first, is we will go to the groom's home first. And so at the very beginning, one of the first things, Jerry always asks that the groom and the groomsmen be dressed up to their shirts, shoes, and socks. Shirts, pants, shoes, and socks. So no details, no accessories, no tie, no cufflinks, none of that is done yet. No jackets, no vest. We'll do that on camera. So what happens is as we get there and we say hello to everybody, just before we actually start photographing them, we'll do detail shots. And this can include the groom and the groomsmen, but it'll be detail shots of the accessories and getting ready shots with the groomsmen, such as shirt cuff, cufflinks, belt, tie, vest, jacket, cologne, shoes, watch. You get the idea. All of those details and accessories. Then
let me tell you from there, actually,
okay.
just for a moment. So guys, if you are photographing the groom's coverage, for example, I personally feel like an hour and a half is quality time, not being stressed, not being rushed, not too much time. An hour and a half is perfect for the groom. So if, for example, they only give me 1 hour or half an hour or 45 minutes, which is very rare, I will say to the groom, get completely dressed, groomsmen, completely dressed, family, all ready to rock as the minute I get there so that I can rush through them. Let me show you 2 examples. So I've just bought a couple of random weddings. I just had to pick 2 or 3 to show you and sort of cross-reference them. So if we look at my computer here, you can sort of see how the groom here is, he's not completely ready, right? He's basically just got his shoes, pants, shirt, in this case, vest as well. So standard shots, laughing shots, having a bit of fun and so on. We've got doing up the vest, we've got a bit of the watch, we've got the guys sort of helping him out getting ready. I think it was his brother from memory. And and then we get the jacket on. So if you wanted something a bit more storytelling, you've sort of got that. Now, in this case, if we go to another wedding, this will be featured on JGBT in future episodes, but you can sort of see how he's completely dressed, and that's totally okay. Now, as far as detail shots, well, there's really not much there. Now, yes, you could shoot the shoes on their own. You can photograph the tie just sitting on a bench. You can photograph the ring and the watch and everything, but I find with detail shots, and as I've said many times on JGBT, I prefer detail shots with a heartbeat, and that is basically detail shots with the person, like a bride in the shoes, the bride in the dress, the guy wearing the tie, the guy's feet in the shoes, and so on. So in this case, there's not much detail because a guy's suit is pretty basic. What's traditional and acceptable, like in this case, I think this was part of his college or university crest or something like that, so I went a bit closer there. I got him doing up his watch. So this is sort of like a nice split lighting there for a groom, quite dramatic. By the way, all the shots that I'm showing you here are straight out of the camera. I haven't touched them, they're straight out of the camera, and that's it. So you'll see there that I've gone, actually, baby, can you, so we've talked a bit about detail now.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about the next set of shots, like close-up, full-length, things like that.
So next we have the groom by himself, which we've seen. And when Jerry does the groom on his own, it's full-length, 3/4, and close-up. So he does all of them because people have different preferences.
So let me talk a bit about that now. So let's say, for example, if I'm running out of time and I find that the groom's suit is very predictable. In other words, most guys wear a monotone suit, as in it's just blue or it's just grey or it's just black or whatever. Once you pretty much see the jacket, you pretty much know what the pants are going to be. And I'm not, that's sort of like it's a must-have shot, but I'm not overly going to die if I don't get a full length, because I'm going to get a full length of the groom naturally in the ceremony, dancing at the reception, things like that. But I will make an effort to do a full-length shot. So in this case, you've got, you know, just simple, classic shots. Now this I basically photographed through an ornament on the wall. That gave me a vignette. Here I'm photographing his reflection. I'm photographing his reflection here and a silhouette here. Walking down the stairs, I've got full sun. So basically, and then you've got full length but sitting down. So in other words, you see his entire body but he's sitting down. So we've done all those shots. Now if you look at another wedding, for example, you can sort of see how this groom is a little bit larger. So in some ways you would say it's better to crop him a little bit tighter. So I eliminate a lot of his weight and then I cut a little bit here as well. And then I didn't really do the full length because I'm not really worried about it. I didn't have too much time. As you can see, from there to there was my coverage, and then I went to the brides, and that was basically it. So what's next on the list? Apart from the groom, full length, 3/4 and or close up, what else is left next?
So then we've got the groom and with all of the groomsmen, and that includes any ring bearers or page boys, depending on what country you're in. And then once you get the whole group of them together, it's the groom with each of his groomsmen.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's have a look at those. So for here, for example, you've got traditional full length. Guys, this is not going to win any awards. You have to remember, don't be too creative for your own good. Melissa implied at the start of her conversation that you've got to do what you have to do what you want to do. Just get it done, and then you can play. So this one, the grandparents are going to like it, the parents are going to like it. This is what they look like. This does not tell you who they are. When they interact, now you get a sense of their camaraderie and what they do. So I always do interactive shots there as well. Now, let me go back and let me show you. So you can sort of see, like, here's a traditional shot of the groom and the groomsmen here. But then if you go to, say, April and Joey's wedding, now I've done this inside. I had nothing to work with. I had a small little hotel room. So this was shot at, say, aperture f10, as you can see, so everybody's in focus. And there you have it. So it's a different way of doing things. So again, looking at this. Now, my suggestion is once you've done that, you also, of course, have to do individual shots. Now, this is some shots that some people just don't do, and that is the groomsmen with each groom, so the groomsmen with the groom. Now, if I was running out of time, I would not do these. This is what I would afford to sacrifice. I grew up in the culture that you just had to get this shot because it could be someone who's from overseas who travelled all the way for the wedding. It could be a brother. So these individual portraits, they take no time. They're the same thing. It's very easy, so you might as well just do them. Okay, so really, really important. All right, maybe what else?
Okay, so once we do that, then we move on to the family. So we get the groom with his mom and dad together. And if they're, again, once we've gone through the relationships form, if they're divorced and not on speaking terms, then that might change. But even if they're divorced but are on speaking terms, Jerry will often get a photo of the groom or the bride with both parents, even if they are divorced, because they are still their parents. Those two people created this child, and it is nice to have, for history purposes, a photo of the three of them together. You might not have mom and dad being cuddly if they're divorced. You might have them on either side of the bride and groom, but that's really an important picture unless there's a lot of animosity there, and then you can skip that. But then on top of that, Jerry will always get photos of the groom, with the mom on his own and also with the dad on his own as well. And then you have the immediate family, so that includes any immediate siblings without their spouses. So it's just basically the family that the groom grew up with. Have them all together as one big family photo, and then just with the siblings. So you have just the groom and his siblings, and then you have them with each of the siblings. So the groom can have a photo with each of them.
All right, so let's look at examples of that. So in this particular wedding, you'll see there's one with dad. Guys, no one's going to win an award with this. This is just nice reflected light. The sun was reflecting off a white wall, giving us that beautiful glow in camera. I normally do one looking in the camera, one interactive. Then you've got mum. The interactive one didn't work, or it may have been unflattering, so I didn't actually use it. Then you've got mum and dad. Now, this is a kind of shot that I might do, let's say, for example, if the mum and dad are together. So usually you will have, most photographers will do dad on one side, groom in the middle, mum on the other side. I find because the guys are a little bit taller, mum loves being the center of attention, so this is a nice way of framing her. Also because guys are usually wearing a dark suit. In this case, mum's wearing something dark, but she might be wearing something light, so therefore we've got the dark clothes framing the lighter coloured one. So I do one looking in the camera. I basically do one interactive, a couple of shots like that. Also, if you have time, I wouldn't say this is a do or die, but if you want to make the parents happy, do this shot. Photograph mum and dad together. Now, if you want to be extra special about it, you photograph dad on his own and mum on her own. Now, knock on wood, let's say dad passes away, mum passes away, they're aging parents, they're 60 plus, 70 plus or whatever. You know what, like this could be the last photograph that we have of these individuals, and this might be the photograph that shows up at their funeral. I know this sounds terrible and morbid in some ways, but we have to photograph with hindsight. So if you can, you would do that individually. Now, then what I did after this, I thought, well, let me do some different kinds of shots. So you may have seen me do this several times over the years in JGBT. It's a very popular shot. Foreground, background shot with mum and dad, getting them looking back, interacting, giggling, and then we get a bit of a kiss, a little bit of a lens flare I actually quite liked, and then it gives us more photographs to play with. Now, so let me explain something, guys. Whenever you've finished the do or die shots and you have more time, what you're seeing here is that I'm doing them again in a different way. Okay, I'm doing them again in a different way. So in this case, this is a different full-length shot of the groom. This is a somewhat similar, but of course vertical and closer. That's a full length of the groom, and obviously a bit more graphic. That is a different shot of the boys. And then, again, if I'm running out of time, I can quickly get the groom in the foreground, the guys in the background. As you can see, if I've got enough time, I'll always do the shots again. So, for example, these ones are the parents. I would not call this a must-have. I would call this bonus material. But, of course, it's going to help you sell, and it's going to make the parents and the couple happy. If I had left after this photograph, that's okay. If I have time, that's when I'm going to actually do those different shots like we discussed, okay? Now, with this one, I'm thinking, you know what? I want some bonus material of the groom, so I did one of this. It's different lighting. It's quite dark. Then I need something to go with it. So this is off-camera flash, a couple of different perspectives. And then I'm like, well, wait a second, wouldn't it be cool to have the guys walking? Because guys love that reservoir dog shot, as we call it in Australia. Not too sure what you guys call it, but that classic photo of Tarantino's cast in Reservoir Dogs as they walk, and it's sort of often synonymous with these kind of groomsmen shots. So looking in the camera, passive. Then we've got walking, cracking up, laughing, giggling, all that kind of stuff. So that gives us a shot to do. Then I looked at it, I was about to go to the brides, I see this and I'm thinking, how cool would it be to get some shadow shots? And that was it. So to show you some comparatives, if I go to, again, back to the grooms, well, you might say, well, what are the different shots that I got of the groom? Well, you would say that if all I got were these ones, fine, but how much more flavour does this add? And that's why I did these, because they were in the same situation. I closed the blinds, we get the shots. So I'm very conscious of making the shots, how do I say, look, photographing in a way that's versatile, that I don't have to change my environment too much, but I can change the look of it very quickly. So you can sort of see here how quickly I went from foreground, background shot. This was in a small little bedroom, and then I got all the boys involved, and then I got that shot. I'm like, you know what, I need a bit more flavour. This was photographed against a TV. This was photographing into the light, that little hint of detail there, and again, that gives me some shots to take as well. If you look at this coverage, this was Erin and Jeremy, one of our favourite weddings. Now, in this case, I had him basically up to his vest and tie, so we got some shots with light coming through. A couple little detail shots you can sort of see there, shot at 1.4. And the bride gave him a present. So he opened it up, so I just basically witnessed him opening up the present. Then, in this case, because the jacket, the suit had a little bit more flair and it was quite old school, I ended up shooting different parts of the suit. So if you want to make it look interesting, you can actually do it with your cropping. Even the tail, that's pretty boring, but you might as well do it. Back of the head, I don't know, why not? Let's do it. Shooting at 1.4. If you remember this wedding, handsome groom, nice guy, but took a while to warm up, actually warm up me and him on the day. So it was sort of quite passive. The energy didn't feel right too much on that morning, but we opened up a little bit and we got some classic shots. So if you're not getting much emotion, in this case, as you can see, at least we're getting some shots that are quite classic. So we've got the, cropping in, all that kind of stuff. This was photographed in the shower, if you remember. Now, you can see how all these shots are taken. Then I do my bread and butter, every shot with the groom. Then I do the groomsmen. Then all I do is change my angle. So if I only did this and didn't get this, I would say that's okay. But if all you got to do is step aside and do this shot, or perhaps your second shooter can do it, great. Now, this is another different bridal party shot. I'm not digging this too much. It looks a little bit contrived, even though that I'm not trying to hide that it's contrived, but something doesn't feel right. That's why the laughing broke that up a little bit. Quite like that he looks like a man of action. He's got his hands out, ready to rock. And then I'm like, all right, let me do something more classic. So you can see again how I'm doing all these shots and it's changing. It's a different three-quarter shot. It's a different close-up. It's a different close-up. I'm shooting through the guys. This is a different bridal party. So basically, if you finish what you just have to do and you've got more time, you simply repeat the shots that you've done in a different way, right? So different bridal party, we said, different kind of groom shot. You've got a different close-up. You've got, again, a different one there as well. You've got a different bridal party shot. You've got a different groom shot and so on. The more you do, and again, guys, I'm not telling you at all that these photographs are anything spectacular. It's just solid, good bread and butter stuff. Tells a story. What did we say at the start? It's that we needed to tell the story. We need to flatter the people that we're photographing. We need to show things that they've spent money on. We've made it meaningful. We've shown the gift being open and all that kind of stuff. We're shooting to sell and so on. So we've covered all the bases. All right, baby, let's talk about the bride's coverage now.
Okay, so moving on to the bride's coverage, we come down here and we pretty much, it's a mirror image almost of exactly what we did with the groom's coverage. So Jerry will always start with the detail shots, accessories, getting ready shots with the bridesmaids. So you've got any veil or headpiece, earrings, rings, front and back of the dress, not just the front. Necklace, bracelet, bag, bouquet. You'll see it with a lot of the detail shots that Jerry does. You've often heard him say that he likes details with a heartbeat. And so he, like at the front of the dress, he almost never, I've actually never seen him photograph it hanging on a hanger, for example, but he'll always have it in front of the bride or on the bride. Same thing with the rings, the earrings, her putting on the earrings, so that there's a little bit more personality, a little bit more life to it. If it's a really formal wedding, there will be times when Jerry will just lay out all of the jewelry and the accessories and photograph it that way as well, but those are always how he starts the day.
Okay, awesome. Now, I just wanted to allude to something here, guys, because you may have looked at one of the groom's coverage. So what's missing out of this groom's coverage? You look at him with detail shots. You've got all these classic shots of him. You've got traditional bridal party. You've got sort of cool bridal party. You've got many variations. And what's missing? Well, family. So with the groom, I believe, maybe he was an only child, Kayla, Sterling?
Yes.
So Sterling was an only child, so we didn't have any sort of siblings or spouses of kids of those siblings and anything. So it was quickly done, basically having the parents and the groom. But you see how family shots are there, but then you get nothing here, which means that I have to go back, keep that in my memory bank and basically say, you know what? When the parents are ready and it's later on in the ceremony, after the church and before the reception or somewhere before I leave that wedding, I must get those parent shots. So groom with mum, groom with dad, groom with mum and dad and siblings and so on, mum and dad and siblings and spouses and kids and so on. All those combinations that we discussed. So let's look now, we're talking specifically about the brides. Now, I asked the bride to be ready, hair and makeup completely done, in a robe, ready to get into her dress. So depending on the bride, she might want to get boudoir shots, so I'll do those quickly. If she, other than that, we might just get her getting into the dress and then just finessing the back of the dress and finessing all those different things. Now, you might say, Jerry, do you go to the wedding and get the bride getting ready? I personally don't like the bride getting ready because I'm saying as in, the makeup is half off, or you've got the bride in just some an old T-shirt and with no finesse, and there's just mess everywhere. Well, I just think that's not really personal. The first impression I want to give the bride is actually of her looking beautiful, looking amazing, but we want a storytelling that she's about to get into the dress, or she's just got into the dress and she's adjusting her details and earrings and necklace and things like that. Now, if I get to the brides and I've basically said I need 2 hours and I get there and she's not ready yet, well, yeah, I'll take some shots. So in this case, right, so we've got chaos everywhere, but this is the granddaughter of the bride. So she's got, you know, a couple of kids from another marriage, but you can sort of see, I mean, which grandparent would not like this? So I am going to be photographing all these shots and giving it to the bride. Isn't that really cute? And her doing the father. And then while I'm waiting for the bride, I'm not going to waste my time. I am going to get the granddaughter, the daughter of the bride and their daughter and the husband. I will take a nice, clean, classic portrait. This is just window light. This is just out of the camera. Like I said, you're seeing the proofs that the bride and groom got. This is every single photograph. So I take those shots. And then we get some interactive ones as well. I'm going to, you know, get her on the seat, and we're going to basically take some photographs of her on her own. And she's looking adorable. Why would I waste time? I am going to shoot to sell here. I mean, what parent and or grandparent would not love these photographs? And then while she's there, let's get mum involved again. Let's get her back. Then the auntie wanted to come. Sure, please, let's get the auntie. Let's also get the mother and the sister. And again, while we're there, so basically she sat on the lap of the dad, and I thought, well, let's get another shot here. So now I'm like, you know what? I've got no time to get her completely ready. So bride, get completely dressed. I'm ready to photograph you because we're running out of time. So in this case, I photographed the bride. So gorgeous girl, but she's quite plus size. So we softened that with the shawl that she brought. So we took all these shots. This is my detail shot. So we've got flowers. We've got the ring and the bracelet. We've got a bit more detail with the bracelet. We've got putting up the earrings. And then we've got the back of the dress along with the veil. We've got her hair, which is a fiery red colour, which is beautiful. We've got those traditional photographs of the bride, and she looks amazing. A bit of negative space because I might want to use that in an enlargement or a wall art or something like that. I've got And then I quickly get into, I'm just trying to think. So Dad wasn't there yet. I think the mum and dad had divorced, right, baby?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got, now this is important because the bride has 2 daughters, so there's going to be more shots that you're going to have to take. So there's the bride with her daughters. Okay, classic, interactive. Then with her mum, so you've got all the girls together, fantastic, interactive. Then of course we've got chosen family, so you've got the husband of the bride, and of course the child as well. And then we've got the individual irrespective families with the bride. And then we've got the bride and her granddaughter. She wasn't cooperating too much, but we finally snuck in a shot. She was quite cute there, beautiful. Then we've got the bride with each of the bridesmaids. That's really important. Okay, and then a close friend. Then we've got mum, because we hadn't done that yet. Then finally, mum and dad get involved. Now, do you see how there is a bit of a disconnect with the veil? One, the veil's over her shoulders because we want to soften her a little bit because she's plus size. But then you've got dad on that side, and then you've got mum on that side. So it's a way of being civil, even though you're divorced or you're broken up, but this is your child, this is your blood child. So we do that interactive. Then, of course, we get the whole family. Now, by the way, this room was chaotic. There was mess everywhere. So I'm deliberately cropping in tight so I don't get all that fuss and mess. And, of course, I do not forget to get the shot of dad and so on as well. Now, by that time, the little bridesmaids got ready too, so that's that. Okay, so we got them involved, and then we got both mothers in a photograph. So that's the mother of the groom. Okay, and then if we can, so I wanted a shot maybe of her finishing off, getting ready or something. I didn't have time to get the bride walking out of the house or the bride rocking up to the car or anything like that. So I needed a shot to emulate the finishing of that coverage. So baby, can you talk to us about the do or die shots of, once you've taken all the photographs, what are the storytelling movement shots that one would do?
At the bride's.
Yep, so you've done all the family shots, so like with the veil over and so on.
We move on to, we get the telling shots as we're moving out of the house. We'll move on to the veil being placed over the bride's face, for example. That can happen, if the bride's gonna have a traditional with the veil covering her face as she goes down the aisle. Typically the parents or the dad will do that. So you have that. Then you have the bride actually leaving her home or wherever she is getting ready. So like in the album, it's can be sometimes abrupt if you're doing the getting ready photos of the bride and then the next second they're coming down the aisle. Like there's no connection, no connecting story. It's like you've gotten from one scene to the other with nothing connecting in the middle. So Jerry will often get the bride leaving and then entering the car. So he'll always get the dad, or if the dad is not there, perhaps her brother or whoever's gonna walk her down the aisle to help her get into the car. So you have that story. And then once we get to the ceremony, we'll have the other side when she's coming out. But you need something to lead into that.
Awesome. So let's show you some examples of that. And then I'll just go back. I want to touch on one other thing here. So you can sort of see here that, like, if you remember Erin's coverage, like I took these photographs, we're running out of time. I quickly snuck in this one. And then I'm like, well, I can't, as Melissa said, I can't just abruptly, well, bang, she's at the ceremony. I need something of her leaving. So we actually went into this room, took this shot, then out of the car, and then Dad was holding the flowers. It was quite fun. And even though that time was of the essence here, we're driving to the wedding, and I'm like, well, we can't not stop for these photographs. And I don't know if it was even caught on camera. I think I've said to the bride, look, the wedding's not going to start without you. Don't worry about the time. We can never get these photographs. You looking your best breast.
Whoopsie.
Well, baby, your top is alluring me into those words, but no, not looking your best and your freshest. We have to take these photographs. So we did that. Isn't that a funny faux pas? Perhaps Joe's got a collection of faux pas that I've said over the years. So I took all of these photographs, and they obviously added huge value to the wedding ceremony. Now, I want to show you another thing here again. So you may have seen this wedding. I don't normally start off with shots like this, but there was sort of harmony in the chaos. You've got the dress everywhere, the flowers, there's all this there's crap everywhere. But I actually quite liked it. So if you feel like you get to the wedding and there's things going on, you want to take it and it's actually good enough to start the wedding with, then go for it. Then the bride come in, as you can see, she's in her pajamas and it doesn't look as nice. But then with Erin, see how she's got on her dress and the back of the dress and even the loops of the dress are not on. That's where I'll usually start with the bride. And of course, they've got the mum and the sister helping her get ready. So this is how most coverages will start. And of course, we have the equivalent of the close-up. We have equivalent of the full length. We have 3/4. We have traditional bridesmaids. We have, and often you'll see this, a reveal of the dad, for example, the dad with the bride. So in this case, they go back to back. And one of the most epic father-daughter reveal stories that you'll ever see. Now, in fact, what you may not know is this family, so the bride and the parents are not together. So again, I got them close and cuddly, but they feel comfortable that they're not really touching each other because they're no longer married. But you would look at this and you would swear that they're a happy family, and they are, but they're just not together, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, they're still the parents, and that's the way it is. So you can sort of see how I get that connection with mum, and then dad's looking away, so I got someone to make him laugh, and then I sort of get that intimate portrait where it would look a bit unusual if they were divorced, not on speaking terms, and so on. And again, I create stories within stories. So as you'd appreciate, I need a shot with dad, then I need a shot with mum, and there'll almost always be one looking at the camera, one interactive. We're looking at the camera, interactive, and that's with most formal portraits. And the only reason why sometimes I don't include them is because the interactive ones, maybe something didn't work. And of course, these continue to be bonus shots. There's that, and there's reflections, and you know, they're a bit sort of, I've been there, done that, didn't like them too much to put them in the album. These ones are beautiful, very classic, and so on and so forth. So if you look at the comparative shots, let's go to the brides here. So I got to the brides and she was actually very, very late. But I got the detail shots. You know, this is an old locket passed through the family. There were so many rings and necklaces. I'm like, well, how am I going to get this? So I put them all in there on the same focal plane. You can see there my aperture is f14 on a 105 macro. It's important that you know that when you're photographing detail shots with a macro lens or even a 1.4 lens, don't shoot it at 2.8 or 1.4 because it's so friggin' shallow. You have to know that a macro lens up close, sometimes like f8 looks like 2.8. So you've got to be really careful. Increase your ISO, give yourself some breathing space on your aperture, and you'll be right. Now, with this bride, she was getting ready, and I'm like, all right, the hairspray was being sprayed. I'm like, I'm going to get a couple of those backlit shots. She wanted not so much boudoir, but something sort of representing her in sort of, you know, evening wear or something like that. This was just natural light coming through the window, a couple of reflections. Then she wanted some with robes, and I'm like, I'm running out of time. What the hell do I do? But we took those shots with her sisters, and then we got some beautiful dramatic shots of her in the hallway with her mum and her bridesmaids doing that as well. So you can sort of see how, you know, the father-daughter reveal can look a little bit different depending on context, situation, where we're at, and so on. And you know, we go from those intimate shots that happen after the reveal, but then we go straight into that classic formal portrait, looking in the camera and then smiling. Now you can see it's not as flattering because she put her chin down, but then she brought her chin up and then she looked away, and then that's probably a better shot for the bride, and so on. And of course, we do those shots individually, close-ups. This is a close friend or a cousin, I think it was. But again, if I'm running out of time, I can go back to my concepts that I've done over and over again. So sometimes we want to reinvent the wheel. Time's running out. What am I going to do? I'm going to go back to those safe shots that I know will make everybody happy, know that will work, and not get too creative. Now, because of course, at this stage, I haven't photographed the bridesmaids yet altogether, so I do that, get them interacting, quickly can get her in the foreground to create some different shots. She had some more detail and gifts that she wanted to give the parents. So do you sort of see how there's a common thread with the 3 weddings that I've been showing you, but each of them have their own little unique challenges. Anything that you don't do, you have to put that in a bookmark. And if you have to, either you're inexperienced or like a bit of confidence, just write it down. Must have shots for later on the day. Here we have bridesmaids in a different way. Obviously with full sun, you've got that beautiful shape and the texture of the wall and so on. Now, you see how this wedding, so what we don't have on the checklist per se is the reveal. So if there's a reveal, now for some cultures, some people who don't know what this basically means, it means that the bride and groom are seeing each other before they get married. So we're revealing what the bride looks like, the groom looks like before the wedding. And usually it's so that we have time to photograph the couple before the wedding. And some people just want to get the nerves over with and they want to soak in the moment together before they walk down the aisle or again, culturally dependent. So in this case, you know, we got these shots back to back, we're soaking each other in, they turn around, they start crying, and it's really beautiful. It's a beautiful story. And we get to this point where he's twirling around and so on. Now, with this reveal, the bride and groom actually are requested, and this is where, don't just put things to memory. When you're having what they call a pre-wedding meeting, this is about a month before the wedding where you discuss all the finer points of the day. We discuss those names and relationships, the must-haves, what's meaningful. I often will ask a bride and groom, is there anything that's important to you that I wouldn't know unless I asked you? So don't expect that I look like I take photographs of things that, again, to an outsider wouldn't be important. So is there anything not obvious to me or I haven't asked you that is important to you? And she'll ask. In this case, the bride and groom said, we want the reveal and we want the family, the bridal party to be, you know, somewhat suggested. So there we were, bridal party in the background. I wasn't worried about showing every human being in the back. It's more about the couple. So then I focused on the couple, focused on the background. Then we got her hugging him from behind, a bit close up, turning around. And then we get some focus on the bridal party, focus in the foreground, go close up, giggling. And then while we're there, why would we waste that easy line? Now we've got a different bridal party shot. So we've got a walking along shot as well. So there we have it. What's next? So so we've gone from, you know, those shots where we discussed maybe the shots of the bridge basically for the bride's coverage and then walking away. And then we arrive at the ceremony. So what's important as from that point onwards?
So once we get to the ceremony, we'll scroll down on our little checklist here. So we remember that we left off by saying we have to get the bride walking away. So we talked about how we need to have the bride getting into the car and then coming back. So then we'll get the bride, once you get to the ceremony, the bride in the doorway, and then her dad, or if her dad's not there, whoever is going to be walking her down the aisle will be helping her get out of the car as well. So giving her his hand, and then escorting him. Once she gets out of the car, Jerry will get the bridesmaids adjusting. You can see number 3 is adjusting the dress just outside of the church. Then the bride walking into the church. So all these different storytelling aspects. And so if you want to just take it from there, because then we'll cut to the next section. Perfect.
Okay, so now obviously, guys, there'll be some of you watching from different parts of the world who'll be thinking, well, that doesn't really apply to me because I do a tea ceremony, I do a South Asian ceremony and so on. Of course, it's culturally different. It really depends on the culture that you're photographing. I think I'm showing you some different examples. I can't show you every different culture that I've ever photographed. We'll be here forever. But ultimately, in this case, I got to the wedding, the ceremony location, and of course, I am going to photograph things like this. Anything, what did we say? Story, flattery, things they've spent money on, what's meaningful, and I'm going to shoot to sell. So all these things tell the story, show off what they've spent money on, and they want to remember these little bits and pieces. So I ended up doing all that. So they had a bagpiper. This is actually not in Scotland. This is actually in Melbourne, Australia, at an old artist colony, a place called Montsalvat. It was made about 100 odd years ago, but it's made to look centuries old and so on. So if you look at this, these are all storytelling, and obviously we're getting into more photojournalism here. We're not, a lot of these shots, of course, are not going to be posed. Now, sometimes they're somewhat directed, and I'll get to that in a moment, but you sort of get the idea. Now, let's cut to this wedding. Now, we did the reveal to do some photographs of them in between and then family shots. But then, of course, the ceremony is a different deal. They're already at the location, so those shots at the car and all those different things don't really apply. In this case, again, we did locations after the reveal, and then we did some detail shots at the wedding. So you sort of see these kinds of shots and so on. Okay, they're nothing fancy, but I'll give you an example. Like this story, they didn't ask me to be there. I just happened to be wondering where the bride was, and they were doing a prep for her. How important are these shots? Look, and the tears rolling down the faces of the bridesmaids after that prayer. That's the things that you just have to look out for. I can't tell you that's a must-have shot. All I just need to tell you is that you need to know and be wary of things happening around you. So the must-have shots are a combination of shots that you direct and you pose, as in your foundation, it's somewhat directed. And then there is just storytelling moments that are going to happen without you that are photojournalistic that you really want to understand. Now, going back to Melissa's list and of this wedding, so for example, I get to the ceremony, I've taken the shots. So what I do is I actually, the groom's waiting. So I've taken the shot of him and the boy's just waiting. So you can see that I've got the filmmaker there. So I'm like, oh, let me crop in, change my angle. This cute little kid was walking around. So I didn't pose this, we're just walking around. Then these girls were playing on their own. Of course I'm going to take these shots. I am a photojournalist, but I'm also a director. So really I have that combination of looks in there. So then, the girls walk up. You're constantly looking. So when you're photographing, guys, you're photographing here and you're waiting for a moment, and you might peer off to the right, then you might peer off to the left, and then look back and again. And you're always doing that. Don't be so one-dimensional. I want you to look from all different angles. So even when I have a second shooter, so often Melissa might second shoot, often Joe might second shoot, I never rely on their photographs. I sort of pretend they don't exist so that if something happens to their shots, they're in the wrong position, I've got those shots. And vice versa. Pretend I don't exist, tell the story from a different angle, and we go from there. So again, to bridge the gap of the story of the bride leaving the location, or if it is in fact a separate location, these shots, we've got this storytelling, like him in the foreground, the cars coming up. I'm showing off the location, I'm showing off and setting the scene rather than just photographing this building on its own. This is a lot more meaningful when it's the car that the bride arrived in. I show a different angle, different perspective of the gate and so on, driving in. Then I go in the front seat, photograph these shots, looking in the camera, bread and butter, get that shot, boom. Then get some more emotion. Love that shot. I can't remember what I said to them, but we've got that beautiful moment between them as well. Then we've got a beautiful moment between the father of the bride and getting there as well. We keep on going, foreheads touching. We mentioned, again, the bride coming out of the car. That's important, so before she gets out. Then arguably being escorted out. Then, in this case, I did a reveal with the page boy and the flower girls. I got gold. I love that. Now, if we keep on going, you can sort of see how these shots were taken. I was inside the car shooting outside, and there was some things that they had to get settled in the ceremony, so we were buying some time here a little bit. So why waste it? I'm going to get the shot of the page boy and the girls because it was a little bit taboo for the kids, and, seeing the opposite sex. I'm like, oh my God, this is freaky. And then we got them involved and so on, and the adjusting of the veil, and then I go inside. So what I'm doing is I'm quickly looking at my environment and saying, how do I maximize this story? How do I maximize being able to shoot on this angle, shoot this particular moment? Is there anything happening here? Okay, wait there, take that shot, let's go here. Then look over your shoulder, go back again and keep on going. Guys, it's important. So this is where you over-deliver. If I did not show photographs, let's say, for example, if the bride didn't see this one, she wouldn't know. She wouldn't say, Jerry, where's that shot? If the bride didn't get, say, this shot, well, maybe the father's not emotional, but I actually brought that out of him in this moment. That will be an over-deliver. Most people will not get this kind of a shot escorting out. Most people will not get the reveal with the kids. Most photographers will not get this kind of a shot. So again, I'm not saying I'm amazing. I'm just saying I'm just maximizing and creating every opportunity to tell the full story of the wedding day. And let's just go back here for a second, like I said, because every wedding will be a little bit different. In this case, we were basically, everything was in the same location, apart from the location portraits, which we ended up going for a quick drive. So in this case, the ceremony was here. There was the reveal with the dad, as we saw. We've got the family shots. We've got the traditional bridal party shots. There's the reveal. But when this ceremony happened, and I've got to say, guys, this was probably the fastest ceremony I have ever been a witness to. And, but when I got there, all right, so I've got the mother-in-law putting on the mother's nail polish. I've got some sort of photojournalistic shots here as well. I thought that's pretty cool. They've got a cornhole, so I'm taking some shots of that happening. Got nice dramatic shadows there on the right-hand side. I've got the blank ceremony there as well, which I think was really fun. And again, so these kinds of shots are important to tell the story, and the bride would have expected me to get a photograph of all these different things. Even this room, this is the bridal room. We love you, but bride and groom and bridesmaids only for the rest of the day. Boom, so that's just private. Then I realised that she was just putting some finishing touches to her vows, and I wouldn't have known that again unless I walked in, so I took all those photographs. So we'll talk about the ceremony in a separate episode, but you can see how all of these shots are leading up to the start of the ceremony. So guys, all I got to say is that there's going to be some inexperienced photographers who may struggle with technique, who may struggle with lighting, who may struggle with posing, but as a mentor to you, as a brother, as an affectionate uncle, do not friggin' shoot a wedding unless you know these must-have shots. That is irresponsible. You just can't do that. You should not photograph a wedding unless you know what to take. And the thing is that it takes people like me and other photographers in the industry who've actually made the mistake of not taking those important photographs to end up knowing what those photographs should be. So over 26 years, I'm like, well, yeah, these are the must-haves. You know, I've never had a couple say, well, where are these shots? Well, no, they're always there. And if for some reason, circumstantially, the weather, time, anything, for some reason, I do not get to do those shots, even if it's not my fault, I will not leave the wedding until I do them. In other words, let's say if I miss some family shots, let's say if I miss some classic bridal portraits and literally I just had no time, or the bride was sick, or something happened during the day, I will go to the reception, and every so often I'll bring the bride out, or the bride and groom out, or the family, and chip away at those must-have do-or-die shots during the reception so that I just don't miss them. And if for some reason I could not do those must-have shots for any reason, and again, even if it's not your fault, you push and push until you can't push no more. And at the end of the wedding, I want you to grab your paperwork and put some notes down. Bride, let's say in Vegas here, for example, July wedding, summer wedding, bride drank, didn't eat, fainted, was out for 2 hours, blah, 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 blah. Because by the time you do the proofs, by the time you do the wedding album, there may be some issues and you want to cover your ass to basically get the facts on paper and stuff like that. But again, you can see how I've shown you now 2 brides and grooms coverages, nothing award-winning, nothing crazy, ridiculously difficult, just solid portraits of the bride and the groom up until the ceremony, and that's basically it. Now, like I said, culturally, if you photograph, say, Indian weddings, South Asian weddings, and you really have not much time on the wedding day to do them because there's so much tradition and culture, then what I have done and used to do is I'll say to the bride and the groom, hey, as a bit of a bonus, I'm going to give you a complimentary location shoot the day after the wedding or 2 days after the wedding. So they'll get dressed again, no family involved, and I do the groom's coverage, do the brides, do those location portraits, and now I've over-delivered. I didn't charge any more for that extra time, but I'll make so much more money with those extra photographs that I've taken there as well. And certainly, for example, if you're doing, say, an Asian wedding where you've got a tea ceremony and things like that, or you've got a bride and a groom where they go to each other's houses at 7 a.m. in the morning, and you've got to play games. The groom has got to play some games to win the love of the bride. So this has been passed down for obviously many, many years and tradition, where the groom has to fight for the affection of the bride on the day. Obviously, you photograph that as well. If you've got a tea ceremony, you want everyone passing that cup of tea, the host passing the tea to the guests or the relatives, to the bride and the groom as well. If you do not understand the culture of a wedding, because you've never done it before, like the first time I did a Jewish wedding, I'm like, what is that? The first time I did a tea ceremony, the first time I did a South Asian wedding, Lebanese, Orthodox, Russian, whatever. If it moves, shoot it. Simple. If there's a different action that takes place, shoot it. And before you even shoot that different action, you should have photographed that first particular scene from different perspectives, different biases, over the shoulder of the groom, over the shoulder of the bride, and so on and so forth. So just make sure that you get a complete coverage. Do not say that it's not your responsibility and there is no excuse, even if it's not your fault. The weather is bad, there is a problem, there's not much time. Basically, they're paying for you for it to be your fault. I'm saying to you, at the end of the day, take ownership of those responsibilities, so that when you are photographing, you're over-delivering, and certainly you're creating this beautiful story and a beautiful album, and you are going to sell more. Remember too, guys, and we'll remind you this as well, remember this. The wedding is not really about you. And I've got to say that as a photographer growing in the years, and as I've matured as a photographer, I've got to say that sometimes I just focus on photographing an effect. Let me photograph a reflection. Let me find a reflection and go bang. Let me find a shadow and go and photograph it. Rather than doing that, I'm saying do those things, but find out what's meaningful to them first, because you might be missing this beautiful story that you wouldn't know unless you ask what is important to the couple. Rather than say, well, look, I photograph everything backlit. That's why they booked me, and that's all I'm going to do. Well, wait a second. What else is it about your work that they like? It could be one wedding where you did something a little bit different. So you've got to know that they probably, they were probably sold on one of your weddings, on your blog, on Instagram or whatever, based on a particular photograph. And if you don't know what that is, that's a difficult thing. So you might say, what is it about my work that attracted you? What would you simply just want to have? I mean, you know, as a girl, you're growing up, or a guy, you're growing up and you've pictured your wedding and all you wanted was this. What are those special moments that you're looking for? They're going to be written down, and they're going to be taken care of throughout the day. And like I said, you do not leave the wedding unless you get them done, even if it means staying extra hours at the wedding where they didn't pay you for it. And that's why, guys, this is a really important point too, that a lot of us will actually charge a certain hourly rate. We'll do like a 3-hour rate, a 4-hour rate. I'm not talking about like a quick shotgun wedding in Vegas chapel that we just quickly do. I'm talking about a wedding that is, let's call it a traditional wedding, as in ceremony, reception, a celebration, and there's the groom getting ready, bride getting ready, or 2 guys or 2 girls, depending on if it's same sex or not, whatever. How do we ask for time? How do we get the time that we need? So rather than offer a 3 or 4-hour rate, then you may miss the groom's coverage, have half an hour at the bride's, and maybe an hour into the reception, and then you've missed all these different stories. What I do as a minimum, groom's coverage, bride's coverage, ceremony, location portraits in the first hour of the reception, and then my second and third collections will bite more into the reception. So if, for example, like I said, if you don't do the bride's or the groom's coverage because you didn't get an opportunity to do it, well, what about the groom on his own? What about the groom with the mum, the groom with the dad? No one's going to say, well, the couple obviously only had a 3-hour coverage, and it's not the photographer's fault. That's why the photographs aren't there. Take it seriously. And some of us may be dealing, and I say this with respect, may be dealing with an unsophisticated audience. In other words, they don't really know. It's the first time they're getting married. They sort of get married and good enough is good enough, and they get you and you do these photographs. But I want you to go back to your grooms and brides coverages and look at the photographs that we've talked about and find out if you're missing anything. So if you're missing anything in your repertoire, mate, tattoo it friggin' on your arm if you have to, or write it down on your arm. I know even Joe, actually, when he did first couple of weddings, he had this checklist, and he had one of those play-by-play, what do you call it? Like like one of those footballers have. Yeah, a quarterback book. So you basically put it on your wrist, and then you sort of Velcro it, and then quickly open up and go bang. Or you can even have it on your phone. You can even actually photograph. Imagine, it's not a bad idea actually. I'm quite proud of myself of the idea that I haven't shared with you yet. Photograph the checklist of the groom's coverage, the first photograph that you take. So the cool thing is that if you're ever sort of missing anything, rather than sort of looking at your playlist or looking at a piece of paper, you sort of, now with mirrorless of course, you can look in the viewfinder and you can see all the stuff that you've have either done or haven't done. If you haven't done it yet, bookmark it, shoot it later on. So guys, I know I'm talking fast, but I wanted to at least include the groom's and the bride's coverage in this. But again, watch this, re-watch this, get your shots. And if you're inexperienced or you're a hobbyist and you've never done this before, do not offer your services at a wedding unless you understand what I'm saying here. And of course, when we start talking about the ceremony and the location portraits and the reception coverage as well. The basis in which you photograph a wedding certainly is in no particular order. We've got flattery, people want to look good and feel good. The story, obviously you want to pretend like someone who was not at the wedding will understand what it was like to be at the wedding by looking at your photographs. Things they spent money on, so things like the front of the dress, the back of the dress, and all the details that they've done and all those kind of things. Certainly, probably the most important, what's meaningful to them. And you can find that out by simply asking them, what are you expecting? What would be meaningful for you, for me to capture of you and the relationships in your family and so on. And also shooting to sell. So when you're photographing, let's just make sure that when you walk into a room, take that first shot of that particular scene with that colour palette and that sensibility, and then ask yourself what will go with that photograph. And then you finish off that story. Now, don't take 50 shots and hoping for 2 or 3 in that spread. I would just say, slow down, take 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. And then you know that that little story, that sensibility, that colour palette will be a story. Ceremony, my advice to you is this. I think that there are many shots that you will actually take on a day in a ceremony that will be viable for verticals, for horizontals and things like that. Once the ceremony starts, try to do a patch of images in the same orientation. If you simply go vertical, horizontal, vertical, 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 horizontal, and so on, it starts to be difficult to design. Now, yes, we can make it work, but ultimately I find everything in a bit of a row can certainly help. A row of horizontals, a row of verticals, and so on. So maybe we'll cut back to you if we can go through the wedding checklist. So let's look at the screen because you'll sort of get an idea of what's going on. Now, don't forget, of course, there will be times that your ceremony, where they're getting ready, the reception, location, everything is all in the same place, so there'll be no car. And that's okay. It is what it is. All I need, though, is something to represent a bridge from the gap between the brides and the ceremony. So imagine if we take this beautiful bridal portrait and then there's nothing of the bride putting the veil on, if that's applicable, nothing beforehand, and then all of a sudden she's coming down the aisle. It just doesn't feel right. So we need a little bit of a bridge. And again, of course, we can't cover every single denomination here and every kind of culture or anything like that, but I will show you a couple of examples. So what you're seeing right now, driving up, so in this case we've got sort of driving up to the ceremony location, and then we got some beautiful shots of the bride and dad, fun shots, emotional shots, forehead touching and everything like that. Then we had the bride in the doorway of the car, and then we had the father escorting her out, which is really cute. In this case, we did a reveal. It's the first time I've done a reveal, actually, of the page boy and the flower girls, which ended up being awesome. This was one of my favourite shots. You can see the body language of all 3 girls be very different. Love that. So what did I do? So where did I add extra value? Because we've got the must-have shots, but where do we add extra value? Well, these are the kind of things. So this was basically, I went inside the car and then I took shots outside the glass, and they were sort of zhuzhing the dress and all that kind of stuff. That was really fun. Then the girls sort of started sitting there on their own. I thought, perfect, let's get him involved. But we didn't have the go-ahead yet to photograph the ceremony. In this case, I did want a bit of a bridge. I thought, okay, let's get the father adjusting the veil one last time. So we did that. You can see how I saw this sort of stained glass, or this beautiful lace framework. So I went inside that area, and you can sort of see how I've stuck to horizontal for quite a while, and then I just added one last vertical just for to give me a sort of an option afterwards. And then I continued vertical for a while. This shot obviously suited horizontal. This is basically where they're about to get ready for walking in the ceremony location. And again, I've gone from horizontal to vertical, one because it suited the shot that I was taking, but also to give me a choice. In this case, the father is sort of escorting her, and of course now I'm including a bit of detail, gone back to the kids, this cute little kid was there as well. And then I'm just constantly shooting some photojournalistic shots of what's going on. You can see in this case, we've got the boys waiting, and I've got sort of a combination of vertical and horizontal. And then we've finally got these shots where they're walking in. Okay, so these are pretty standard, but it's important that you know that most people will not do these kind of shots in the wedding album, but they would appreciate them in their proofs for history's sake as to who walked down the aisle and how. And don't forget too that there's going to be often where you have no filmmaker, so the moments between the moments end up being just as important as the obvious ones. So just be wary. If there's no filmmaker, they're probably going to, the families are going to expect a bit more from you, or they should, or at least you should expect more from yourself. So in this case, we've gone from walking in, then coming down the aisle, and then I'm going back to the guys, then I'm going back to the couple, then we get the actual shaking of the hand, which you know is going to happen, so make sure you're in a position to do so. Also, guys, don't forget that when you're photographing at the front of the aisle, do not stand in front of the groom. You may stand in front of him, but squat down. Don't stand in front of the parents, because, like I said, you know, you've got the parents who are there, you know, and uncles and aunties come from overseas. I mean, they were there since they were born, and all of a sudden, one of the most important moments of their life, coming down the aisle, and you're right in front. So be wary of those around you, and also be wary of the filmmakers. So you can sort of see how that's basically evolved up until this point.
What if everything's happening at the same location? So the bride's getting ready at the same place where the ceremony is. Is it a good idea to stage a car shot just to keep it feeling more real or authentic?
Well, arguably, there would be no car. It makes sense, so there would be no car symbolising that story. I have no problem in staging something or getting a bit more aesthetic value out of something that actually happened, but if there's no car and she walked to the location, I would say that's fine. Probably a good segue into this next wedding as an example, because you can sort of see how I was showing you 3 comparative weddings as to how this is all done. So this wedding, we ended off, you know, she was putting some finishing touches on her speech. Then we got her getting the prayer done, and then I went a bit wider to show the environment. Then I went a bit closer, crop out all the crap there and all that kind of stuff. We got a few tears, which is beautiful. And then, you know, we set the scene from behind, so I didn't quite catch the mother and the father walking down because I was actually already in that room. Well, here I got something. So I got the father and the mother walking down the aisle. Then I ran around and got the father adjusting. Then I've got the entire wide shot of the ceremony location, and then I've got the boys sort of coming in towards that environment. I went wide, I went close, and then I basically shot over the guest to get a feeling of what the groom was feeling in this case. And then, of course, I've got every single person walking. So this one was a nice little scene setter to bridge that gap between the guys were set and now the bridesmaids are walking down the aisle. And then I ended up staying put, focusing on the girl in front, and then changing my focus to be that of sometimes the person from behind, as you can see there, splitting between that first person and that last person. Kept on doing that. Then I went back to the groom, and then now, of course, we've got the bride. So I've got nice and wide, then I've got close. Then you know, don't forget too that when you're walking down the aisle, that's an emotional moment. Don't just be one-dimensional and photograph the bride. Give yourself a bit of breathing space to sort of look over your shoulder. Maybe the groom's crying or having a great reaction, or the parents on either side have got a great reaction. So remember, just sort of put your eye to the camera, and then if everything moves in your peripheral vision, you can just move and take that shot, especially if you're shooting on your own. I've shot most of my weddings on my own, and yes, I have an assistant often, but they're usually there to help me with my camera gear and lighting and all that kind of stuff. I find them more useful in that way than being a second shooter. That being said, sometimes Melissa, sometimes Joe, and or both in a bigger wedding, we might do some various angles from the ceremony perspective. In this case, I was on my own. I wasn't on my own per se. Joe was there, but he was filming. So this wedding will be featured on future episodes of JGPT. But as you can see, this is very quick. So just to show you, so there I am on my own. I've photographed them coming down the aisle. The parents, I've got grandma sort of crying, I love that. Then back to the bride and the father, then the other parents, then back to the bride, and then his reaction, and then we've got them as well. And as you can see, it's quite tough because you're going from sunlight to backlight and all that kind of stuff, and you simply do the best you can. My advice to you is that when you're photographing, let's say if you're photographing, you don't have to shoot that way and then that way. Well, there's a couple of options. Either you shoot aperture priority and you hope for the best, knowing that you could be anywhere from a third stop to 2 stops out potentially, or you have a habit of actually understanding the exposure difference between here and here. For example, so sometimes when I'm looking this way, the bride's coming down the aisle for full sun, and then I've got backlight. That might be 3 clicks, as I call it, 3 third stop increments, 1 stop difference. So either you just remember to go, click, click, click. So when I'm shooting the sun in full sunlight, I go click, 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 and then I shoot there, click, 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 and then shoot there. Or now with mirrorless, you're seeing what you see is what you get. You can simply just adjust one of your dials, whether it's your ISO, shutter speed or aperture, and simply move until you're happy with what you get. And of course, we can do that very easily these days. So that's really cool. So in this case, let me come back here. Yeah, and that's basically it. So don't forget, there will be, after a while, you'll learn where to stand. You might even ask the groom or the coordinator, where is the groom going to greet the bride and the father? And it could be halfway down the aisle. It could be all the way up. It could be also depending on the culture and the religion as to where they're going to meet. So please ask these questions if you're unfamiliar with how the ceremony goes for that particular religion or culture or ethnicity or anything like that. But remember, it's not just about the bride and or the father and or the groom. It's obviously about pretty much all the main players. And even though that you might be on your own, the pressure might be on you as it was for me here, it's just something that we have to do. And we have to work it out. All right, baby, let's talk a bit more about once they've greeted the bride, the bride, the groom. All right, baby, your turn.
When the girls are coming down the aisle, before they come down the aisle, remind them just not to look at your feet. Because when someone's nervous, that tends to be one of the first things that they do, and they just look down, and then you don't get any photos of them looking up or at their faces. A
quick thing there as well is remember to tell them not to look at the camera either, because sometimes a bridesmaid or a bride or anything will actually acknowledge you in camera and basically be right there, and then just sit there and wait for you to take a photograph. And that's when first of all, you sort of try to pre-warn them not to look at the camera with anything photojournalistic. And number two, if someone does look at the camera, just keep the camera there and look away. Then the attention will be taken away from them, and then you simply click again. And that's how you do it. Sorry to interject.
And another reminder too is if you are going to get a chance to talk to them anyways before the ceremony, is just remind them to walk slow, because there's nothing worse than having them rush down the aisle because they're just nervous and they're trying to speed walk down the aisle, and then you're trying to focus and recompose, and it's hard to get them in focus, or you don't get more than one shot because they've walked down the aisle for so quickly. So give yourself every chance to get them all in. But if we go back here to our list, let's see, we have so the bride and groom at the front of the altar. So once they've walked down the aisle, and then the next one that we want to make sure that we get is a wide angle shot from the front and from behind. So basically from the front, so you can see all the guests that are in attendance, but also from behind, so you can get to see it all from that perspective. And then look for any detail shots. Sometimes we are so focused on detail shots from the reception that we forget that there's a lot of details that are put in at the ceremony, like the programs and the flowers and that kind of thing. Then, of course, we have all of the normal formalities that you would have during a wedding ceremony: ring exchange, kiss, everything. So just, good rule of thumb is what Jerry said earlier. As soon as anything moves or anything changes, just photograph it. You just got to get it. If there is a program, you can kind of look at it to see when everything is going to be taking place. If there isn't, you just have to be on. You have to be prepared all the time. And sometimes you have to work really, really fast. After that, at the end of the ceremony, if you're in a country where they sign a register, I know in the US that we don't do that, but in most other countries, after the ceremony is finished and before the bride and groom walk down the aisle, they actually go to a table on the side and they sign a register. That's where the marriage license gets signed, and the bride and groom have to sign, and their witnesses have to sign. So that, make sure you get that taken care of. And if you're there early enough and you see where it's set up, you know, there's sometimes where it's an outdoor ceremony. If it's in a location that's got really bad light, there's nothing wrong with asking if that can be moved a little bit off to the side. You might be in a situation where the table where they're going to sign the register is half in sun and half in shade. So the bride is going to be in the sun, the groom is going to be in the shade, and that's going to be horrible. Whereas if you just move the table over 2 feet, you can get them both in the same light. So things to look out for even before the ceremony begins. Let's see, so we have here walking down the aisle. So after the ceremony is done, walking down the aisle, trying to get a wide shot as well so you can see all the guests being really excited for them. Group shot from the balcony or the front of the church. This is something that you'd have to coordinate with the couple ahead of time. Make sure that you're going to let them know that you're going to do this. If you can do it during the ceremony and get the celebrant or whoever to make that announcement, that would be fantastic. Otherwise, you can just do it after, outside of the church or the ceremony location, after everyone is finished congratulating them. Then you can get up and try to do a big group shot. But that's pretty important, and a lot of us don't do that. But it's a great way for everyone to have a record, for the bride and groom to have a record of every single person that was there at their ceremony. And that may be the only time that they have that one photo where everyone is in there. And then a couple of the traditional shots that you want to get, the bride and groom at the entrance to the ceremony location, especially if it's a church. If it's just a normal ceremony location, it may not be as necessary. But if it's a church, that's something that you'd want to make sure that you get in there because they've chosen that ceremony location for a reason. As they're coming out, if there's confetti or bubbles or anything like that, you want to be prepared for that, get ready for that. Because if you're shooting inside the church and then you quickly come outside, your settings are going to be completely different, of course. So you want to make sure that you've prepared for that ahead of time so you can quickly change your exposure settings before you get outside to get those confetti and bubble shots. And then the mingling, and that's when everyone's congratulating them and that kind of thing. We have here, we're going to see examples of these in a minute, wide shot of the couple with the church spire. If you're at a church, of course, that goes along with the couple in the entrance, just documenting where they had their ceremony and getting that in a photo. And then a big group shot of all the guests, which we already talked about. So Jerry, do you want to talk about some of those examples?
Yeah, sure. So let's go and talk a bit about the ceremony, so as it begins. The important thing with a ceremony is, I know it sounds stupid, but is to capture it, is understand the word ceremony. What is the ritual that's happening between the bride and the groom, depending on the culture and religion and all that kind of thing. So generally speaking, I think the biggest problems that I find that people make is that, mistakes that people make is that you shoot bias to one side of the family or over the shoulder of the groom or so on, and you don't get representation of the other side. That's an important one to understand. So in other words, if you find yourself gravitating towards over the groom's shoulder and the bride, I'd probably do that if the bride had more emotion, but I've got to make sure I will do that, shoot over the shoulder of the bride and then go towards the groom and so on and so forth. So in this case, let's have a look at some shots. Okay, so the ritual started, right? So here we are. Okay, so I've got like a clean shot, nice, even. I've made sure the pillars between the boys there and between the girls, and it's nice and even. Then I've gone over the shoulder of the guys and biased towards the bride, okay? Then I went a little bit closer. That's an easy thing to do. Then I went vertical to crop them all out. Okay, so then now I'm actually looking for opportunities in the audience. The kids are looking really cute there, so I'm like, all right, I've got those 3 kids. What about the other ones? Okay, I've got those ones. Great. Grandma, very important player in the wedding family. And now I've gone back to the bride. Then I'm thinking, you know what? I need to go back to the father. And then the mother. So they're actually broken up. So you can see how I've given his time to shine, then her time to shine. Then I've got the other father and the other mother. So again, I've got all the players and I'm going back to the bride. What I'm probably missing so far is a shot bias to the boys. And here it is. It's funny because I didn't even check if I did the right thing, but I thought, I know how I shoot, so I'm like, damn it, I hope I got that shot bias to the boys, which I do. He did not have as much emotion as she did, but it doesn't mean I don't take any shots. Then I squatted down, so if you look basically between the bridesmaids here, and I squatted down and I noticed that little grandson was with granddad, and then I ended up going back to them quite a few times. But while I was there, let me take a wide shot of that side of the family because I did that before with the other side. And then as it becomes ceremonial, you sort of got to know that when someone's doing vows, it's a catch-22. It's 50-50. I don't know what you would say, Melissa, but when someone is doing vows, they're prone to being more emotional, and someone listening to it sometimes is more prone to being emotional listening to those vows. So you sort of got to get the vibe of what's going on. In other words, over whose shoulder do you do the vow shot? Now, what is safe? Have someone predictably be in the centre of the aisle, photographing anything ceremonial, ring exchange, vows, anything like that, kissing, whatever, in the middle of the aisle. But don't forget, you can get some real gems when you're shooting over the shoulder of someone.
I found personally, like over the years, I found that usually the person that's reading their vows or giving their vows will get more emotional.
Right.
And that's usually only the case if they've written their own vows, which most couples do today. But yeah, for some reason, it feels real when they're finally saying it.
Yeah. So then after that ceremonial stuff, I went wider. I got those beautiful tears, and then I went a bit closer. So of course, I'm going to be shooting over his shoulder to get her. And then I went a bit wider so I can actually get... See, I got a shot of her doing a speech before, a bit cleaner. That's sort of quite an obvious one. But then we got the kiss, and then we went sort of more bias, and then we got an idea of the context. So remember as well, guys, photojournalism is telling the story, but sometimes it's your choice whether to include context or to exclude context. Think of it like if the context has meaning, as in the surroundings of the couple have a bit more meaning, then you include it. Sometimes you want to isolate that moment and that mood, and therefore you want to exclude. So in other words, you know, when I started going on, that's her best friend watching and she's crying, but then you can sort of see how I did that horizontal, but I got a bit of her in there. Then I'm like, well, let me go vertical on a bit of an angle, and that helped me crop her out a little bit more. Then I kept on going, and then I thought, wouldn't it be fun to get that shot? Because I'd done plenty of shots before with the father and the grandson. You can see them all here. But then I need a shot cleanly that balances up with this photograph. So we'll look at that one, and you can see how that is the balance of that photograph. Then we go, again, more close up in the middle. This was actually me climbing up a staircase that I wasn't allowed to, but I did. Kept on going. Again, she had the hero emotion, but still, you can see how I'm more biased to the bride now. I need to get some shots of the groom, and that's when I'm thinking, okay, well, you know, maybe when she's doing the vows, maybe he might get emotional, and then you can sort of see the warmth in his eyes there, and then you can see him being a bit more sentimental there. I've photographed the other parents a lot. I've got to come back to them. Now, is this me freaking out and running around and going crazy? Yes. Am I looking for moments like this all the time? Of course I am. And I just keep on working at it. I keep on working the room. Of course, we've got the ring exchange, so giving the rings, and then from different perspectives, putting on the rings, because she was very animated. It was a bit more biased to that way. And then, of course, we go all the way up to the kiss. In this case, of course, we have the register as well. And then sometimes you can get gold when, you know, you get some beautiful reactions like that. I'm always looking around over my shoulder. I'm looking for kids having fun. I'm looking to shoot through things, different perspectives, bias to mum, for example, close up. I'm looking for detail shots, including hands. I mean, this is a very tough thing. Now, this will work better if you're shooting on your own. If you have a lens, for example, that's like a 24 to 120 in the Nikon range. I think Canon, from memory, have a 24 to 105. It's a good all-rounder, and you'll need to go close very quickly. Or you may have one of those holsters where you have one camera that's close and one camera that's a little bit wide. So you can do that as well, of course. And then as we're doing it, guys, you've got to, in a sense, an emotional moment. You've got to go to the register. You've got to go to maybe who's singing. And then you're going back and forth. And again, you'll be amazed on what you can find. So sometimes you might dismiss these kinds of shots where you're thinking, man, you've totally walked down the aisle waiting for them to come up, but then all of a sudden they're getting all these emotional images where you wouldn't have as well. Now this one, of course, I've done lots of close-ups. I've gone wide now. So now I've got mum sort of kissing one of the bridesmaids or the sisters. And then you've got practical homage to Steve McCurry's Afghan Girl in the foreground there, which I love. The fact that we're seeing this ceremony through the eyes of this little kid, which I think is cute. Then you'll know that shots like this happen where maybe it's getting real now and I'm going to look at the rings, we're actually married. And again, I'm shooting from different angles and different perspectives. Now I'm actually getting you to witness this ceremony through the eyes of the matron of honour, the singer. And then we keep on going. And here I wasn't quite ready for it. And of course, this is probably better close up, but I actually quite like the fact that it shows off these flowers, and then that replicates with the flowers of the flower girl. And then you've got this beautiful moment contained between these pillars. Then I get ready for them coming down the aisle. So vertical close up on the side, and of course we get the fist pump. So that all works out well. Let's have a look at some other ceremonies. Of course, this one was a non-denominational in an old artist colony in Melbourne. This one is a lot more traditional. This is in a Catholic church. So when Melissa was talking about doing shots like this is important. I mean, they've actually, they've hired this incredibly beautiful church from behind, wide angle, then we go close. Then I'll say, guys, stop for a second, run in front of them, get this shot, and then get this shot, full length, and then a closer compression. And then some shots that we actually miss that are so beautiful is when the bride walks into the church, she'll often get adjusted and everything. She walked into the side of this church, and we use this archway to just get her there. And then we've got sort of the bridesmaids and dad sort of adjusting, and then we've got the priest sort of doing it, and then we run out and then get everyone walking down the aisle. Now, it's important to know that this is going to be tough to get every single person because they might be standing very close together. It's important as well that you get the groom's reaction. Now you can see how, look at the ISO here, 12,800 ISO. Pretty amazing what the D5 can do. And then, now in this case, I think we had Melissa and Joe, I think you guys were both there as well. So we did have sometimes 2 to 3 shooters going on at the one time. So if you do have a second shooter, then they could have done those shots in the aisle. Down the aisle. I actually ended up doing a lot of the shots before the bride walked down the aisle. These ones I think Melissa and or Joe did. So they're there, and it's important that if they can see me, I can see them, which means they're in the wrong place. Squat down behind the dress, take these from behind, and then I get all of these shots. And then we get the shots of them walking down the aisle as well. In this case, it's important to note too, guys, that you should be wearing rubber sole shoes. If you're in a church, and if you're wearing like hard leather shoes or anything that can clunk, then rubber is going to be the best thing. So, by the way, I recommend Cole Haan's. Cole Haan, C-O-L-E, Haan, H-A-A-N. They basically make shoes for men and women that, I'll say for photographers, for anyone who works sort of long hours who would appreciate like a sneaker bottom but a leather top, so you get that sort of that formal nature of the nice little shoe, and then you got the rubber nature where you don't have to hear you coming down the aisles of a church and everything like that. Now, you'll notice how a lot of the shots are horizontal. Like I was saying to you, that when you're on a bit of a streak of a different look or scene or feel at the ceremony, try to stick to a similar orientation. And if you have to do vertical, like I took this shot, but then you look at this one, and then you see the fact that we're showing more context, that 3 priests are there, we're showing a bit more there, but of course you get more emotion there. So you can cut between them, no problem, and you can make it work if you have to. But just know that, it could be very easy if you just stand in one position and do nothing else. But what you want to do is you go up to the priest and or church lady and say to them, hey, my name is Jerry Guionis, I'm here for can't wait to hear your ceremony. You can basically, if you invite them to say, what can't I do, then they might think of reasons for you not to do it. In other words, don't use flash, stay here and be unobtrusive. Hey, we want a bit more freedom. You might go up to the priest and say, hey, looking forward to the ceremony. Just to let you know, I'll be very unobtrusive. I'll totally respect the wishes of the church. Let me know if there's anything that I can do for you. So it's a nice little greeting, everything's good. And the priest might turn around and basically say exactly that. Please be discreet, use no flash, unless it's walking down the aisle. Say, perfect, that suits me perfectly. And that's basically it. Technically speaking, I usually use flash when they're coming down the aisle of a church, and either way, recessional and processional. But most of the ceremony, I use natural light. And you could see, like I said, look at the ISO that we're using here, 12,800. Is it noisy? Well, of course it's going to be noisy at 12,800. Is it acceptable? Yes, it is. So you'll see that when I am shooting with the second shooter, I tend to basically say, guys, we have a game plan. Hey, you be biased to the groom, you be biased to the bride, you be biased to the family and the bridal party, you set the scene, detail shots, whatever. So you need to be like a military operation. What I do say to them though is, when you're shooting, always look out for me, because I'm going to have prime and pole position. So whenever you're photographing, just every so often, every 10 seconds, look at me. I might see something that I can't get to because the press is in the way, someone's in the way, and I might do this. That means, hey, I can't shoot that, or I'm seeing something that you're not, shoot that. In turn, they could actually do that to me and say, hey, Jerry, you're right there, you're missing someone crying or laughing or whatever. Ultimately, the main shooter shouldn't really, in my humble opinion, not rely on the second or third shooters. And vice versa. It's almost like you have to pretend like we don't exist. That means the coverage will be done automatically. But the bias should be shown to the main shooter. So as you can see, we've got so many different perspectives here. And I'll just quickly go through these. You know, we've got shooting through things, we've got the speeches, we've got from focusing to the parents, to the other parents, we go back to the speeches, we've got the bridesmaids bias over here, then we've got family, then we've got the other side of the bridesmaids, then we've got a bit of detail. We're shooting from the bridal party perspective. In other words, shoot every angle. Like, really make the viewer of this wedding, who was not even at the wedding, understand what exactly happened. And will I be caught up in the romance of it? This particular bride, of course, whom we're featuring at the moment on JGPT, Bride and Groom, Bride and Stephanie, she said, I love the spirit and sensibility of Grace Kelly. And you can sort of see that there is a strong traditional ceremonial part of this ceremony. Even though it's quite obvious, but she wanted that classic sort of look, and I think we ended up getting it. I think I would swear that was, you know, inspired by Grace Kelly and when she was at the altar in the south of France, and then, yeah, Morocco, so Monaco, Morocco, you know, a couple of letters. And then, like I said, don't assume you can't go anywhere. Now, of course, don't push it with the priest, in the sense that don't run around and everything like that. Be very discreet, squat down when you're walking in front of someone, slowly walk around different things, and you can sort of see that we're shooting from different perspectives here. So there was times where I'll be shooting from here back this way, from the outside of the church back this way, and so on and so forth. But here you've got every perspective, escorting down the aisle, coming on the side of the crypt of the church, and so on, you know, over the shoulders of the bridesmaids and so on as well. So it is a very, very important approach that we do. I want to tell you something. This is a really important one too. This ceremony, guys, was done. I've got to tell you, like the ceremony started, and I don't normally ask how long does a ceremony go for, because it's usually about 15, 20 minutes if it's non-denominational. And I should be more specific because I learnt my lesson here at this particular wedding. This wedding started, so I want you to look at the timestamp here, okay? So you've got here, it says 3:09, okay? So 3:09 p.m. So then I just was, you know, my normal self. No one else was photographing on this particular day. I quickly went from one side of the family to another side of the family. I went bias to the guys, a cleaner shot of the family, a cleaner shot of the other side of the family, bias to the girls, ceremonial, over the shoulder of the groom, back to the other side, over the shoulder of the bride, kept on going, left, right, front, middle, exchanging rings, close up, then the kiss. Now, I want you to pay attention to something. 3:12 p.m. Can you believe that this whole ceremony, from when the bride walked down the aisle to when the kiss happened, it was literally 3 minutes? And I did not know. So if I took my time and didn't put the pressure on myself at the start, can you imagine delivering 3 photographs to the bride? Although when you look at it, it looks a little bit thin, but I got every perspective. Probably what I'm missing is a big wide shot of everything. Now, that being said, I sort of got it, because when we were here, okay, there's the ceremony, so that's looking, you know, back that way. And I'm missing a wide shot from behind, which I would always do. But like I said, as soon as that ceremony starts, know that there's a little bit of time, usually, except for this case, that there's going to be a bit of time to do what you're going to do. And that's just it. We often say, do what you have to do what you want to do. Once all that happened, of course, I didn't get a wide shot of everybody, so I thought, let me do this when they were kissing. We did that. We got a bit of a fist pump from memory. Yep. Then they walked down, and then this is probably equivalent to what I would have done in a wider way. Then, and then I went back the other way. They weren't even supposed to separate, but they did, but that's fine. You just roll with it. Now, obviously, there's usually congratulating. So this is the boys walking in. Usually the congratulating is done outside, so I quickly did that, and they had a bit of a kiss. Now, some weddings will be a little bit different. We talked about the recessional, as in walking down. So this was coming out. So from inside to outside. Then the bride and groom were there. I didn't want to waste any time. So while all the guests were walking out, I went in there, did a bit of a pose, beautiful natural light, and we did that. Then them coming down. Of course, we have to have a second shooter. Get them from behind. Beautiful. And then they're coming out. And they come down the path. You see how cool that shot is, that most of us would miss that shot from behind. And then I'm shooting down low here. And then we get a big group shot. So we come from here. I wanted something a little bit different. So we had them on a bit of an angle, we went wider. And you've got to know, after the big group shot is done, you've got to know that it dissipates and it can look really good. So then the bride and groom walk down the aisle, and then all these shots were bonus shots that we can have. Now, some weddings, like this one, you'll walk out and different kind of magic will happen. So in this case, you know, they're walking out, I'm not saying a word, and then I'm like, hey man, pick your wife up. And that made him smile because we said wife for the first time. Picked her up, had a bit of a kiss, giggling, and then everyone came out, and I'm looking for reactions. By this stage, I would know who's important to whom, what reaction's going to be good. Is it going to be dad, like we've got here, go wider, go closer. The all-important first handshake with the groom is really cool. Then kids are normally emotional in terms of that, like most of the brides and grooms love the idea of these kinds of shots, and I just keep on shooting. This will happen now. As I'm shooting, I'm noticing the kids playing croquet or whatever you call that game on the side. So as I'm photographing, I'm always looking left and right, coming this way. Keep on shooting this way. They're playing the game. And then my attention diverts. And then I'm thinking, all right, then the girls start going there. So this is an important shot to do a wide shot. So I quite like the fact we've got little mystery man here, cute little kid over here, and then we can see an idea of what it was like. So while I was there, I've done a lot of the kids. I've photographed all those bits and pieces. Now I'm going to go bird's eye. So I'm standing on that ledge, doing all these shots. And then you get these cute reactions, which is really cute. So just never have a dull moment. If there's some reason you need a toilet break, there is an issue, you need to have a drink, whatever, make sure your second shooter or your assistant is just there following the couple every single moment. And if it's just you, then bad luck, just live through it and you'll be totally fine. So you can see how many shots we took in this particular way in terms of congratulating. Then we get to the shot that Melissa ended off talking about, and that is a big group shot, as I showed you before. In this case, I'm on a bird's eye view. Usually, you know, if there's a staircase, it's easy to put them up and then shoot down, you know, shoot from here, and then they're all on staircases. And then you say the obvious thing, hey, if you can see the camera can see you. Now with most cameras, you've got a flip out screen, so you can bring the camera up and then just flip the camera down. Make sure you get your exposure right, make sure the focus is locked in and you're fine. And that's basically it. Usually I'll do a shot like this and then cheering. It's sort of one of those shots that I do. And I quite like the aftermath where they're all giggling and having fun and they sort of break away from the formality of you posing them in this particular shot. Then to break it up like I did before, get the bride and groom in the foreground and you can quickly get a different shot and it's a bit more casual and it's a bit more fun. And so like I said, guys, there's so many ways of doing that, but just be wary that you want different perspectives, and don't forget there's going to be hundreds of people in that wedding, arguably with an iPhone, who all have a different perspective. So it's sometimes hard to compete with every angle. What we want to do is we want to exceed expectations, walk all around the couple and do what we do, but be in a position where we can do all of those shots and have some fun. So that's a really, really important part of what we do. What else can I add here that we need to worry about?
You ready to go to family shots?
Yeah, so, but like I said, guys, importantly, ceremonial, just, you have to get those moments. Now, there'll be a time where you might miss a kissing shot. This has happened to me before, where the couple kiss like this, and then literally you're right there before they kiss, and it just doesn't work. So what I will do is I might say to the bride and groom after they walk out of the church, guys, I've got this, there's some beautiful light in the church right now. Just before we do some family shots, can I just grab you in, get you in front of the altar to do a beautiful kiss? Then I'll do a wide shot, okay, like maybe in a way where it's cropped where you wouldn't know there was no other people there. And then I'll do a close-up kiss, and then I'll cleverly insert them chronologically in a way where you think that that was the actual moment where they kissed. And that's what I've gotten away with it a couple of times doing that as well. So even though it's not my fault per se, they've shot very quickly, they kiss very quickly, it is what it is. Now, while I've got everyone's attention there, so while I've taken that shot and then they're looking at me, I'll say, all right, anyone for family photographs? Sorry, anyone invited for family photographs? I'll be right here, right now. Okay, when I say invited, no one's formally got an invitation for those photographs, but if you've got a distant cousin, a second cousin, a family friend that shouldn't really be in the photographs, I mean, of course, we care about them, but we don't really need to have them in the photographs, and the bride and groom pretty much only want the immediate families, then that's a way of separating the acquaintances from the close friends and family. So at one point, I'll say that, and I'll say, guys, family photographs will be right around the corner right now. Then I'll walk up to the couple, and I'll basically say to them, after a few minutes, if they haven't sort of dissipated, hey guys, come with me, grab them by the hand. One last thing. Hey guys, immediate family, grandparents, bridal party, siblings, spouses, kids, everyone this way. And then we go and take those photographs. Any thoughts or questions, or you want to move on to the next thing?
Yeah, I think we're ready to move on to the next thing.
All right, let's do it.
All right, so now we're going to move on to family shots, which, we'll do these right after the ceremony ends, because that's when everyone is all together, because the ceremony is just finished, and you won't need the immediate family once you start photographing the bride and groom and the bridal party. So it's best to get those over with right at the start, and then you can just let them go away. So we've got, we'll start with the bride and groom. And so, like, we would have taken some during the bride's getting ready and the groom's getting ready, don't forget. So you may have the groom with his family, the bride with her family, but you don't have those family photos with the bride and groom together. So that's what we're going to do now. So ideally, you will have always gotten the groom with his family done before. Now you're going to do, you would have done the bride and her family before, but now it's important to get those family shots again, but this time with the bride and groom together. So we'll start with the bride and groom with the bride's parents, then the bride and groom with the bride's parents and the bride's siblings, and then we'll include spouses and grandchildren. And this is where that relationships form that we talked about last time comes into play, because you need to know who's a partner, who's a long-term partner, who's a spouse, and who's just a girlfriend that they've just been together for a couple months and may not last. Because you need to be very careful with those family dynamics, or else by the time it comes around time to doing the album, you're gonna have people say, well, they broke up, so we don't really want them in the album anymore, and then now what? So Jerry will always start by doing the bride and groom with the parents, then with the siblings, and then add the spouses. So or a long-term partner who's been there for a long time, and children. Then you do both sets of parents. So you do the bride and groom, and then the groom's parents and the bride's parents. Now, if you're thinking about this in order, Jerry's doing this in the most efficient way possible. Bride and groom are not moving. They're just staying put in the same exact spot. You're adding the parents, then you add the siblings and spouses, then the siblings and spouses leave, the parents stay, and you add the groom's parents. So you're doing it in a very efficient way. Bride and groom's parents haven't moved for the last couple shots, but you're just adding the groom's parents. Once you've done that, then you let the bride's parents go, and you start on the groom's side of the family, and you do the same thing. We have the bride and groom with the groom's parents, the bride and groom with the groom's parents and the siblings. Same thing with spouses and children. And then you do the bride and groom with the siblings only, without the parents. And then you do the bride and groom with the grandparents. Make sure you always get the grandparents. Always, always important. And then any other requests that the bride and groom may have. They may have like really special aunt and uncle that's really important for them to get a photo with. And they may be there. You want to make sure you get that as well. And then if you haven't done the parents on their own at the home, at the groom's home or at the bride's home, now's a great time to do that, because most likely for most of them, they will not have had a professional photograph taken of just the two of them in a very long time. So this is a great way to get a portrait of the two of them and possibly get a sale of a wall portrait or reprints after the fact. If you have grandparents, just a note about grandparents and little kids, babies and stuff, try to get them out of the way first. Because if the bride and groom have large families, this could go on for a good 20 minutes and you may lose the kids very quickly because they've already sat through a whole ceremony and they're already exhausted. And of course, any elderly grandparents or relatives may not be able to stand or be out in the heat or in the cold, wherever you are, for that long of a time. So always be really considerate of anyone who may need to have their portraits done quickly so that you can move on. And before we just do that, just one quick comment before Jerry goes and shows you some of these shots, is that, Jerry talked about, always moving and always keeping busy. Even if you go to the bathroom, you just, try to make sure that someone's always there. And I have to say that during a ceremony, Jerry is hustling. He is constantly moving. I have never seen Jerry stand in one spot for longer than a second and a half at a ceremony. He is constantly moving around, just one shot after another, after another, after another, going from the front to the back, to the left, to the right, to the center aisle, constantly moving, never wasting a second, which was a great lesson for me in how hard you've got to hustle to make sure you get all those shots in that time period. So Jerry, do you want to show some of the family shots now to go along with what we just talked about?
Yeah, definitely. So remember too, so some of you will not do a grooms and brides coverage, or maybe if you're lucky do the brides coverage, and possibly not even have family photographs at the brides coverage. So this is where, if you remember correctly, let's just scroll all the way up again. So this was the groom's coverage, remember? We photographed him on his own, and we photographed him with each of the boys and so on. Now, with the bride, we had photographed the bride with the parents individually, siblings, all that kind of stuff. So going all the way now back to family shots, now they were having a bit of a drink, right? So we left it at that, having a bit of a drink, and I'm like, well, while we're there, let's just take a shot with a drink so it's got a more festive vibe. Okay, so we just did that. Okay, it looks like they were posing for photographs from memory, but I don't think we did it. But then we wanted a big group shot. I'm like, well, where am I going to do that? I thought, okay, this little staircase area, that'll give us some layering. And then I set up the family shots there. Nothing fancy, but then I went back and did these shots. I think this was with siblings from memory. So with the bride and groom and siblings, so you can sort of see all those. Now, you see how I've gone back to this. I would have done this at the groom's home, but they weren't there. So I take the bride out because we'll do these shots with the bride, parents of the groom with the groom. I've got the mother, I've got the father, I've got the mother and father. In fact, no, pardon me. This is a different... Okay, so yes. All right, that makes sense. So I've got the groom with the parents, with mum, with dad. Then while they're there, I'm not going to waste it, let's get the bride involved. And then let's get both sets of parents. And then we've got grandparents. And then again, we've got grandparents with the groom. So again, what's meaningful to the grandparents? Yes, I mean, there are a couple now with the bride and groom, but it's important that we actually have these separate shots. Then we've got the grandmother on the other side. And then while we're there, let's get that shot. And then we went back to a big group shot. So sometimes what will happen is families will interrupt your normal flow. You have to remember what in your repertoire you've missed because someone interrupted you. Be flexible like that. Now, what I would prefer to you, rather than actually ask the family, what family shots would you like? I'm telling you now, they're going to miss in important combinations. So what you need to do is actually think of every combination, make sure they're all set and you know what you're doing, and then you might say on the wedding day, hey, is there anything other than these kind of, well, sorry, let me go back a step. At the pre-wedding meeting, which is about a month before the wedding, you will discuss the kinds of shots that you will do. So for family photographs, bride and groom will be there. We're going to have the bride's parents. Then we're going to have the bride's parents and siblings, blood family. Then spouses and kids, because they could get divorced and that photo was ruined. Then we take them out, leave the parents there. Then we grab the groom's parents. Great shot. Leave the parents there, grab the first parents away. Now we've got the bride's parents. Then we've grabbed the blood siblings. Then we've got spouses of those siblings and kids if we have them. And of course, we'll do combinations with grandparents as well. Now, if you're running out of time, and you're looking at your watch and like, you know what, I've got barely 10 minutes to photograph the couple and location portraits and fancy stuff, and I've got this big group, like all these families waiting for a photograph. What on earth am I going to do? They're not going to care about you had no time. They're just going to care about being included in the photograph. So I'll do this. I'll do 4 shots. In Greek, we call it the soy of the family. Basically, it is I'll say, everybody, groom's father's extended family. So we grab the immediate family and then the groom's father's extended family. Bang, one big group shot, done. Okay, take them away. Groom's mother's extended family. Put them all there, bang, done. And then you do the same with the bride. Bride's mum's extended family, bride's dad's extended family. So with 4 shots above and beyond the immediate family combinations, you are done. No one can say that you didn't take all the important shots. If someone wants a shot individually with the bride and the groom, they're probably going to come up and ask the bride and the groom and or you, and you say yes graciously and you do it no problem. Now, going back to this family in particular, so I've sort of backdated, I've gone back to the groom and the parent shot. I've taken extended family shots, but these ones are very, very important because we've got parents and siblings and spouses and kids, and then we've got what I call the blood family, the original blood family. So basically you've got the bride's brother and sister and their blood parents. Of course, they're broken up, but that's why we keep them on either side. And then I've got the siblings only, because I don't think the brother was there at home, because I had the siblings before with the girls, but not the brother. And then I do the brother on his own as well. Yep, and now we add the groom too. So you sort of see how there's every combination. The mother requested a shot with the bride again. I had already done it, but let's do it again, make her happy. Basically, never refuse a shot, because by the time you argue or respectfully divert, you could probably do the shot in that time, so why even waste that time? Let's go back to some other examples. So if we look at this family shots, so we've got here the bride and groom, the mother of the groom. I think the father passed away from memory, I can't remember there, but I did all that. And of course, we didn't do those shots without the bride beforehand. So we did that. We caught up with those. Because the groom's mother's going to say, well, hey, you photographed the bride's family like that, even though she's not going to say it's my fault, I wasn't ready on time. She's just going to say, well, where the hell are the photographs? So I take the shot with the groom and the mother. I take with the sister. I've got the siblings only. It's every combination. And of course, I've got the other family, the parents. And then I've got the mother with the new husband or partner, and then I've just got the father because he might not want the mother of his children in that photograph, just on his own. And then we go back to the blood family, and of course we have the extended with spouses and kids in there as well. In other words, guys, do every combination. And I know that it could seem laborious, but it'll cover your ass and you do it quickly. And you've seen me on JGBT doing these kind of family shots. This is where I'm not after perfection. Yes, I'm not going to be lazy about it, but I'm not after perfection when it comes to light. Light will normally be overcast, will be sort of open shade. Normally they'll be leaning forward and leaning together. I'm going to sacrifice the perfection for a little bit of speed here, but ultimately we need these family combinations. In this case, because the grandmothers are aging, as they all are, I quickly went from here to this. The lighting was actually sunlight reflecting off a white wall. That's why there's a beautiful glow. And these are out of camera, by the way. There's nothing there. So we went from there. We got the emotional shots. We got one grandmother in, then the other grandmother. And then this is probably more of a typical example. We went from parents to siblings. Then we added grandma in as well for that immediate family shot, because I thought she'd appreciate that. Then we would do both parents if they're still together at the same shot with the bride and groom. And then we go to the other side of the family, parents, and then grandmother, because we did that for the other side. And then we've got both parents with the siblings and grandmas as well. So sometimes, if the families are small enough to do them all together, that's fantastic. She was an important cousin, so we ended up doing those shots. And then that was it. Now, while we were waiting, they wanted some individual shots, which I did. This is just reflected light, really quick, nice reflected light, which is very complementary to mature age skin. And then we started doing the location portraits. So like I said, guys, you can see that all of these shots, there is a repertoire, there is a formula to doing all of these kinds of shots, and they don't normally change. You just got to remember, if you're doing something for one side of the family, you got to do it for the other. I usually say it's all or nothing, and preferably all. In other words, if the bride and groom's parents, the groom's parents request a shot on their own, then do it, but you have to do it for the other side. Otherwise, it's going to be an issue for you. And again, this goes back again. I'm always covering my butt and doing these shots that I didn't do before because they just, all of them weren't ready. Or perhaps they could have been, they're all ready, but we're missing a sister. Well, that's important to them. You can see, if you recall, I missed doing these shots at the bride's house because there was not enough time. So I put a mental note and I did all those traditional shots of the bridesmaids with the bride. And that's basically it, guys. I hope you got a lot from that. So guys, all right, so we're right up to where we've finished the family shots and now we are there with the bridal party, and what do we do first? Well, I call them my 7 do or die shots, and basically, let me go through them with you, and I'll show them to you at the same time. So it's full length of the bride and the groom. So let me come back here and show you. Now you'll probably wonder why I've actually skipped in this particular wedding. So you can sort of see how I've done family shots, and I'm up to the point where, all right, I'm ready to go play. And you've probably heard your mother or father say, do what you have to do what you want to do. And that is the same case when it comes to a wedding story or a wedding collection and so on. So in this case, they said, well, Jerry, the car is going to leave very soon. They spent a lot of money in the car and would like some car shots. I'm like, great, all right, so let's do some car shots. So we went from here, walking down. Why waste that opportunity? Let's get some shots coming down. And then we had the car in the foreground, kissy-kissy, maybe shooting through the glass, and then maybe getting them in the back seat of the car, having a bit of fun. I ended up loving these shots actually more than anything. And then I thought, let's get the bride in there and let's get the groom in there and so on. So you can sort of see how I try to maximize every opportunity where walking down the stairs is one thing. Then I've got the couple say, hey, before you leave, let me run around inside and get that shot. Then get inside, let me take all those shots. Now, while the bride is inside, get the groom out, photograph the bride, get the groom involved, and then get the bride out and get the groom. Because if I wanted to do a spread of this story, well, I can do foreground, background, I can go the groom and the bride. I've got a story here, there, and there. So you can sort of see how I don't overshoot when I'm actually looking at what I'm doing. I'm trying to be very concise, not shoot 50 shots hoping that one shot is going to be good enough to go in there. So even if you shoot portraits, it's sort of a good discipline to have that whenever you're photographing, how can we have all these combinations? Like you could do a family of 5, for example. You'll do mum on her own, dad on his own. You'll do mum and the girls, you know, dad and the boys, if that's relevant, individually, like every combination. And I'd rather you take less shots and make them count. And then we're shooting for stories and wall art and collections and things like that. So that'll all make a difference. But now let's be very specific now. As far as the traditional bride and groom and the bridal party shots, baby, do you want to talk about that? So if we go to the traditional bride and groom bridal party portraits, and then I'll be very specific as we talk about it afterwards.
So if you imagine it, where we left off was we had all the family together.
Yep.
And if you remember, we had the bride and groom staying in one position, and then we would move the family all around them to try to be as efficient as possible. So once that's done, we say goodbye to the family, let them go away so that you don't have any distractions, and then what you've got left is your bride and groom standing right there. So still on the idea of being as efficient as possible, that's when Jerry will get his bride and groom full-length portrait. And this isn't anything fancy, nothing creative. I know we're gonna get more bride and groom photos later on, but this is your traditional historical photo of the bride and groom full-length shot. You wanna show the details. This is where you'd make sure the flowers are in her hand, all of that stuff. And then after you do that, you do a close-up of the bride and groom. And then we bring in the bridal party. So you have the flower girls and the ring bearers or the page boys, depending on where you're from. And we do that because usually they're younger. So you try to get them in as quickly as you can, because if they don't last, then you're okay and you still got the shot. And then after that, once you've done the ring bearers or page boys and the flower girls, then you get all of the bridal party all together. And then after you do that, you want the bride alone by herself. So if you can imagine how we're moving people out and keeping the bride and groom center, a bride on her own by herself, full length, both the front and the back, particularly if you didn't get that during the getting ready photos earlier in the day. Then you do the same thing with the groom, because remember, for the album, you want to match it up always. And then you do the groom with the groomsmen, as well as the bride with the bridesmaids as well.
All right, so let me show you proof of that at this particular wedding. And sometimes if when you're doing it, someone interrupts you, you've got to remember where you've left off. So it's like a mental checklist. Now, some people, if you're inexperienced, you might want to have a list and sort of tick it off, or take your time, change your lens, and then freak out and think, oh my God, did I get everything? Think of an excuse, or hey, guys, have a drink. I'm just going to change my card or change a battery or anything like that. So basically, as you can see with this wedding, sometimes what I do is I take the children first. So I do all the photographs with the children first so they can go, especially if the actual, the couple have said and gone out of their way, hey, we want the kids done. Let's get them, piss them off and let's have some fun with the adults. So after the car shots in this particular wedding, the kids were just playing. So I'm like, well, why would I waste that? So these were just photojournalistic. They were just playing. There was birds, all that kind of stuff. And I just let them play. And then we got some beautiful portraits of them. So then I did the bridal party shots. So if you look at a bit of a grid here, these bridal party shots, and I quite like these kinds of shots where they're sort of intermingled a little bit, so that's not too perfect. Sometimes what I do is I will put them in a row. Let me see if I've got this. See, even that sort of, you see how they're sort of broken up a little bit, like they're back to back, front to front. Let's see if this one was done maybe the way I normally do it or used to do it. Let me have a look. Okay, I'll come back to that thought process in a moment because there's a few things I want to discuss. Okay, let me come back to that. So, bridal party shots, like say if the kids are leaving or they're going to cry or they want to go to sleep or anything like that, or the parents want to take them, then do every shot with the bridal party. So you can see how I've got the bridal party, you see how I've just cropped in closer with the kids, and then of course what we're missing here is for the kids shots is we do a shot with all the girls again, and then we do a shot with the boys. Now you might say, well, why are you doing these again when you did them earlier in the day? Well, do you see the groomsmen shots where the page boy wasn't there? If you look at the bridesmaid shots, well, the girls were there. So if, for example, if you're running out of time and you literally only had a few minutes to go, I would sacrifice the girls and the guys shot on location because I've already done them. I'm just after variety here now. And also, usually family and parents and the couple want a bit of continuity. So, for example, when we talk about those 7 do or die shots, let's run through them again. It's the traditional full length of the bride and the groom. It is the close-up of the bride and the groom. It's the bride on her own, the groom on his own, the girls on their own, the guys on their own, bridal party. They're the do or die. This, you can see how we're doing them in a different order. We've got bridal party, we've got girls, we've got guys, and then I've got just the kids with the bride and the groom. That's always a popular shot. And of course you've got them individually earlier in the day, as in the girls with the bride and the boys with the groom. Now, let's come back to this. Traditional full length. This is not going to win any awards. This is, some might say it's quite in fact boring. Just nice, light, traditional. You notice how the flowers are slightly off. We see the actual dress. It's not meant to be romantic. They're simply looking at the camera smiling. Then while we're there, I usually get them to hold the flowers and go nice and close because also parents love this kind of portrait as well. And then, even though that I've done many shots of the bride in her own full length, I'll do one again. Then while we're there, let's not waste it. I just get the groom involved, do foreground, background, and then all of a sudden I've got a whole another sequence. While we're there, get the girl out, leave him in, and then again, we've got those traditional portraits. So let's go through it again. Traditional full length portrait, then close up, then bride, then groom, then girls, guys, bridal party. Where you over-deliver, and which most people don't expect, is all the kids with the bride and the groom. While we're there, let's, like I said, add the groom involved for a traditional portrait so you don't waste that moment and so on. Now let's see some various examples of all those things to see if I in fact practice what I preach. So there's the traditional full-length portrait of this couple. As you can see, the environment wanted a little bit more breathing space, so I ended up going a little bit wider on that particular photograph. Don't forget, guys, these are straight out of camera, nothing done to them. We've also got this one as a close-up and so on. Now, of course, I've got the traditional full length of the bride. I also have the groom. Now, at one point, we did the bridal party and we didn't have enough time. They wanted something traditional. Now, we had a small amount of time, and I've got to tell you, I'm not a big fan of this portrait because they're all sitting down. It's like it's a soccer photograph, you know. What I prefer is this one. For me, that's much more appealing. So they're all family and they're all friends. We're making little groupings out of all these people, and it's more of a story. I usually would actually do a lineup, dare I say it, almost like a firing squad, but this I wouldn't call traditional. I'd call it casual because they're all linking arms, having fun, all giggling away and all that kind of stuff. But I thought, well, how do I, in case they want a traditional photograph and I'm there, what do I do? Well, the quickest way to get that many people in a shot is just to do that. And that's basically it. Although I don't really like that photograph, I'll live with it. Let's have a look at this particular wedding and see if we did the same thing. Again, traditional full length. Then we've got close-ups. Okay, and then let's see. So now, because here I didn't have enough time, I sacrificed the bride and groom, the bridal party portrait. So you will not see groomsmen's portrait and bridesmaids. But what I didn't do is that one, the big bridal party shot. Actually, you've got the girls' ones there. See the guys, I don't see the guys' ones. Again, if I'm running out of time or one of the guys going for a drink or they're going to the bathroom, I'm like, well, I've got plenty of them earlier in the day. So I'm totally fine with that. This particular wedding, you'll see how this is just a very quick, easy way to do a big bridal party on steps. So there's my big bridal party portrait, but you can see that I want to leave this location. So I've done that bridal party portrait. I hadn't done the actual bridesmaids individually with the bride earlier in the day, if you remember. So we had no time. We did the bridesmaids all together, but there was no individual portraits with the bride. I'm like, well, I can't do that for the groom all here and not do it for the bride side. Even though it's not my fault, it'll be deemed as my fault after the fact. So I do all of these portraits individually with the bride, and then as I was photographing them individually, a few of them sat down. I'm like, I'm not going to waste that. Let me actually get them all sitting down. And then you can sort of see that they half sat down. I'm like, all right, let's get together, look at the camera. So there's the, let's do what I have to do, even though this is over-delivering. But then I get them mingling, and you will find that so much more appealing because this tells you more about who they are rather than just what they look like, right? As you can see, guys, here and also at home, is I never waste an opportunity. I'm always saying, well, how do I bridge the gap between this portrait and the next portrait to actually maximise the sale and maximise the story? So while they're sitting there, the bride's already comfortable. Well, let's get the groom in, and then we keep on going. So classic portrait, hands looking a little bit weird, put the hand down, a little bit softer, change my angle, and then they go down, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But you can see, though, let's go back now. You see how we went from a traditional portrait here, didn't waste that either. To make that look different very quickly, all I have to do is actually bring the bride and groom in the foreground. And again, I'm maximising the portrait and making it look different. Now, as far as the, actually, let me go file name for this one. Let me have a look here. So once we do all these kinds of shots, guys, it's important that we do them again differently. So let's describe them again. Full length of the bride and the groom, close up of the bride and the groom, bride on her own, groom on his own, girls on their own, guys on their own, full bridal party. Now it's our job. Basically, if you look at the location portraits Here, just take one from Melissa here. Shoot at least one full length of the bride and the groom at every location. Shoot a blend of contemporary, classical and candid shots. Shoot a few car shots, full length and close-ups using different parts of the car if that's relevant. And shoot at least one series of intimate close-up shots of the bride and the groom. So when I had many photographers work for me, we had a company style. And it was important that we had a similar style with every single wedding, although every photographer will have a strength and a quirk and all those different things. So what I'm getting at is, as we start looking at this in more detail, you sort of understand that if we look at this, what would you say this is? This is a different close-up, okay? The close-up we had was this one, more traditional. A different full length. Well, you'd say that one's a different full length. You would say that's a different 3/4. That's a different full length of the bride. That's a different close-up. So I keep on repeating this over and over and over again until I have no more time. This, before they come out of the car in the next location, then I've got this portrait. And then I just change my angle, a different portrait. Different bridal party shot. So it's those do or die shots that you just got to keep repeating. But again, these shots aren't anything spectacular. They're just solid bread and butter wedding images. And every so often, if we can plug in a wow somewhere there, whether it's a meaningful wow or whether it's a wow as in technique or a bit of both, but that's your job to repeat that process. Different close-up, a different close-up, a different close-up of the groom, a different girl shot, a different close-up. Oh, cancel. A different groom shot, a different groomsman shot, a different full length. So I don't remember the last time anyone has ever come up to me and said, Jerry, where is that photograph of my dress? Where is that photograph of the girls? Where's that photograph of the guys? So basically, you take the ammunition away by just doing the right thing.
What happens if like the timeline totally falls apart and you just can't get the photos? Like you've tried as hard as you could and like Steph said, you know, maybe the coordinator has come out and now it's just time and you've had to go in for the reception and you didn't get all of those photos.
Yeah, so, well, here's the thing. I just don't think, I don't take no for an answer. Those 7 shots are a must. You just have to do them, no question, even if it's not your fault. The only time that I would sacrifice a couple of those shots, like I said, well, here's what you could sacrifice. Let's just get right back to basics. So let's go through them again. Full length of the bride and the groom, close-up of the bride and groom, bride on her own, groom on his own, girls on their own, guys on their own, bridal party. Now, what have we already done at that point? We've actually photographed the girls earlier, hopefully. Let's knock that off. We've photographed the guys, let's lock that off. We've photographed the bride, we've photographed the groom. Now what have we got left? At the absolute minimum, you had 1 minute, full length of the bride and the groom, close up of the bride and the groom, bridal party. If that's all you did, at least you've got representation of all those shots, and maybe not the variety that you're hoping for, but still, I sort of still take ownership of it, and I'll go to the reception, they'll usher them in. You know how the bride and groom normally eat first? Mm-hmm. Well, they've got about at least 10 minutes somewhere there after they've eaten and while everyone else is getting fed, usually half an hour before the dance bracket or whatever. I say, hey guys, I see beautiful light in the hallway there. We missed a couple of shots before because we're running out of time. Let's do it. Grab them by the hand, go for a walk, get those shots, and I get the variety. Like I said, I mean, can you imagine the bride and groom only getting, say, this shot? That's the only shot represented in the actual album of them as a couple. Well, what a shame that they didn't get this kind of shot. What a shame that they didn't get something a bit like this, or this, or this, and so on, and so on, and so on. It goes on and on and on and on. So those 3 shots are the absolute minimum that I'd recommend. But again, you will actually have to have something to finish off with, which we'll talk about shortly. Maybe another question?
I know you said if you run out of time, that's the minimum that you would try to get. But if you aren't faced with those time constraints, let's say everything is going the way you planned on it,
yeah.
Do you personally try to get those 7 do or die shots excuse me, in each location? Or is there a point when it's just you and, you know how, because the
Yeah.
7 do or die shots include the bridal party. Are you taking them with you through every single location? You're trying to get those 7 do or die shots every single scene that you're in?
So it depends. Like in Australia, it was quite customary that you would take the bridal party at every location right up until the end of it, and then you would drive to the reception. It's often that the weddings are not all in one location, like here in perhaps Europe. In Melbourne, you would go to the groom's home, like where he grew up, then go to the bride's home, where she grew up, usually a church of some description, synagogue, whatever the religion, then go for location portraits, could be a park, could be a beach, could be a laneway, and then you drive the reception. Here in America, I'd say most weddings are usually in one location. The significance and the sentimentality of actually getting ready at the homes is not that important. In Melbourne, it's very important. I think if people thought of it a bit more, I think that they would realise, hey, this is where you grew up. How cool would it be to have some final portraits of you as a single person in this home? But it actually makes it easier for me anyway. So and in the end, I don't really care that much from that perspective because it's sort of, it's nice and easy. Yes, if let's say, for example, you had 2 hours. Okay, so you had 2 hours with the bride and the groom and the bridal party, and you've taken all the family shots, you've taken all the traditional shots, and now you've got 2 hours. What I would do is I would take shots of the bride and the groom now for the next half hour, nail an incredible story and beautiful portraits of them. Then once you've got that in the bag, then you get the girls in for a shot. Then you might go back to the bride. Then you go to the groom, then you go to the boys. Then the couple again. Then you get the bridal party. Then you go back to the bride and the groom. And then after that, there's half an hour left. You want more of the bride and the groom, and the bridal party twiddling their thumbs saying, what the hell am I here for? Say, hey guys, love you, see you at the reception. Driver, take them away. Or if they're at the same location, guys, have a drink, have a good cocktail, we'll see you at the reception, and then we spend the rest of the time with the bride and the groom. I guess if I'm running out of time, I at least like to do one different series of portraits with the bridal party, at least, if I have time. This particular wedding, you'll notice that I have done many, many girl shots and guy shots. So for example, if you look at these guys shots, there's the traditional one. You've got different angles. You've got this different shot. You've got this one. You've got that one, the walking one. Girls, there's like plenty of different shots here. Actually, there's only one series here. And then we went back and did those. So then afterwards, what I ended up doing was, let me come back here. You know, photojournalistic shots of the girls playing. I did those traditional ones. And then the couple just wanted photographs on their own, and the bridal party were happy just to relax. So I just went with it. And that was it. I just spent my whole time photographing the groom, the bride, and the couple in different ways. In a way that shows off the dress, the location, what's meaningful to them, important to them, and all that kind of stuff. So there is a bit of a balance, but I think that after a while, you'll learn what couples usually want, and the common denominator is they want variety, they want wide, they want three-quarter, they want close-up. And for me, I'll always make sure that there's always a couple of, like I said, intimate portraits. Where are they? So intimate, we happen to do it in the car. Foreground background. We've got traditional ones, as we discussed. This is a different full length. Somewhat close-up of him, but mainly her. And like I said, we're using the environment. They've got this beautiful location, so we should really use it. These are pretty boring to me because it's nice, and I know a lot of people love that big landscape, little people. I just think it's boring. I find that much more exciting because you're seeing faces and expressions and all that stuff. But I know that if I'm a purist, I like emotion, screw this shot, well, they're going to get upset. So I do it. And then I walked in, the coordinator was hurrying me up, and I'm like, one more shot, one more shot. So I squeezed these in, and I wouldn't have got them unless I fought for it. And then while I was there, I took a few little detail shots. Then I'm like, screw detail shots, where are the bride and the groom? They were getting ready in this room. And I had been to this location so many years, never knew this existed. Because the location would be used for portraits, but I've never shot a reception there. So I didn't realise that this room existed. So I'm like, oh my God, I've got to take this shot, I've got to take that one, I've got to take all of these ones. And then I had more time, so that they had they didn't even walk in yet, but it started raining, and they'd seen this backlit shot with rain, which I just hate now because I've done it so many times. Everyone's does it now, and it's lost its flavour, but whatever, I did it. But we did some rain shots, you know, we did that, and I think this was the beautiful one that shows the scene. And again, finally, we did a few more detail shots, as you can see, which we'll come to in a minute. So Melissa will talk about the reception photographs. If you are at a location, like sometimes the bride and grooms will say, oh my God, I've got an amazing location for the portraits. And then I go to it, there's no trees, it's a park, and everyone's playing frisbee and picnicking. And like, we're already there now. We've gone outside, I'm there, and I'm waiting for the penny to drop. Nothing. It's just, the sun is like at 1 o'clock, and what the hell do I do? So I knelt down, sat on the ground. If they stood straight, even if it was backlit, the sun would hit here and here. So what I ended up doing is they leant forward, I lay on the ground, shot up, crop people out, and just focus on intimacy and negative space. And that's it, because when you look at it, this, like, ignore the background. It's still a beautiful shot. And you might say, well, there wouldn't be a pillar there. Well, a guy could squat down, put one knee up, one knee down, all of a sudden you've got a lap to sit on. And so on. The foreground, background, this could be anywhere. Yes, the environment makes it pretty and all that kind of stuff, but I think sometimes we get too, I guess, intimidated by location. Yeah. Whereas if you're photographing people, you're photographing people. The wall or the tree or the waterfall or whatever the hell that is, it's fluff. It doesn't mean much unless they met there, they proposed there, and it's meaningful. Other than that, I think we just need to slow down and say, well, how would I, like even this, if there was crap in the way here, I've just put a little tree in the foreground. And if there was no tree, but there was a little bush, I'd just rip out a frigging piece of the bush and just put it in the foreground, and then all of a sudden I'm adding texture in a white overcast sky where there was nothing. You know, so there's always an answer. There's always an answer to the case. Yes. So the problem with couples who want photojournalistic photographs and they insist on it, which is very, you would say that's the genre or the style that people like in Europe, and I never believe them. Because the twice in my career that I did, and I didn't hardly pose a single thing, they would come back and say, where's this photograph with my mum? Where's it? Well, did you stand with your mum on the wedding day naturally, normally? Well, I didn't take it then. So I'm not going to document history because history, that didn't happen. So at the very least on a photojournalistic wedding, if they want that, do those 7 do or die. Like, then you've got everything. And then of course the traditional family portraits. At the very least, you do those combination of family portraits and those 7 do or die, then they can just do what they want. I would suggest, though, couples would benefit from a little bit of direction. It doesn't have to be as precise as what I do. It could be, hey, talk shit, but do it in that light. Go. Yeah. You know what I mean? Have some fun in that light. Can you turn around? Okay, I'll leave you, let you be. So couples don't really care. Posing is a dirty word in our industry, and certainly dirtier in different countries per se, but never underestimate the power of saying, to a bride, as beautiful as you are, I can make you shine brighter than ever before with a simple direction. Would you like that? In other words, you're going to look awesome. Let me do my thing. Otherwise, you'll get pissed off and not like the photographs. You know what I mean? Because naturally, we don't look good. Ironically, this is funny. Ironically, a bride will insist on not being posed to be natural, and she'll spend 2 hours in a hair and makeup chair. Like, think about that for a second. Well, you don't get your hair and makeup every day. You don't buy this dress every day. How would you not want someone to bring out the best in you? So I would say these kinds of things not in a wry, bitchy kind of a way. I would say it in a way where I'm painting her into a corner where she'll tell me, I think we should have some shots that are quite directed and stuff. And, you know, loose direction I think I'd really appreciate, you know, and so on. And don't underestimate the power of educating them. Hey, if you just stand here naturally and you shrug your shoulders down, you'll have little pinches of skin hanging over your dress. If you bob your head too far down, you might get a bit of a double chin. If you have bad light on you, let me show you what bad light looks like on a beautiful girl. Blah, blah, blah. So we need a little bit of direction to understand where the light's coming from, maybe what angle it is, what mood we're going for, and so on and so on. So I find that when I have had, and I still have couples that, see, some couples book me for my photojournalism, and yes, I do that at ceremonies and receptions, but a lot of my shots look like I happen to be at the right place at the right time, but in fact 90% of it's actually directed. So, and most couples love that finesse of a pose, but the natural nature of something candid. So if you can combine that, and with portraiture, It's not always looking in the camera smiling. You sort of want moments between moments. And if, whether we're inexperienced or experienced, or whether we lack confidence or have a lot of confidence, my suggestion for you, or for anyone here watching at home as well, is to have like a repertoire, a base to work from. So you might say, all right, I've got the 7 do or dies. What do I do now? All right, if there's a pillar, let me, something for the bride to sit on, she can sit on it. And then all of a sudden the groom is standing and she's sitting on the pillar, or a staircase, or whatever it may be. Great, there's a foundation portrait. If there's a hierarchy of this kind of location, well, then you know that's a base to stand from. Here's another one, front to front, hands over, and then holding the waist. There's another one, another foundation pose, as I call it. Then straight away we can crop closer on a different angle, and again we've got a different look. We've got walking away, maybe the bride looking back, walking away, groom looking back, or looking at each other. Groom looking at bride, bride looking away. Great. Escort arm, perfect. Voyeuristic shots. So these kinds of things should trigger you. On every single wedding, if I can do a series of close-ups, a series of voyeuristic shots, of walking shots, foreground, background, all that stuff, you'll never be in trouble, because that's what you show on your website, that's what you show on your blog or your Instagram or whatever it may be. And they're always there, rain, hail or shine. Yes, baby?
So just a quick question. What happens if you're dealing with a couple, and probably this would happen more with the bride, or sometimes I've seen it happen with the maid of honor too, where they're not going along with your program, with what you're saying, and they want to dictate where to do these photos and how to do them and what order to do them in and all of that. Like, how would you deal in that situation where you're maybe losing control a little bit? Yeah,
I think that comes with inexperience and perhaps lack of education of the photographer being educated, and or not educating the clients as to what you do. Every time there has been a problem with a couple, it's usually my fault. And as you get more experience, there's just less of that. I'm not saying I'm flawless. No, no, no. We all make mistakes. We're never perfect. It's purely we want to minimise things. So I ask myself, if a bride's pissed off, is she being a bitch, or did I just not educate myself or her as to what I'm doing, if it's right or not? It's usually, you know what? Never really experienced that before. I never experienced an alpha dog, a bride's coming up to me and saying, hey, I want to shoot there. Can we shoot there? Can we do the girl shot now? Can we do photograph me now? Like, you would say before the wedding, just so you know, there is a series of shots that are do or die that I do at every single wedding. Straight after the family portraits, I will do these series of shots. And I tell them this, and I say, they're not that terribly exciting. They're looking in the camera smiling. This is important for history. This is what you look like. It's not who you are. Once we do these shots, then we're going to do those 7 do or die shots, but differently. If the bridal party, do you want your bridal party to come for those extra hour of portraits that we're doing? They might say,
I couldn't quite hear you.
Great, Jerry. Siri's happy to help.
I've got it on do not disturb, but Siri's ready to rock. So anyway, what was I saying? So I will educate them as to exactly what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And before I leave a location, say, hey guys, I feel with your dress, with your hair and this light, I think if we go to the beach down the road, it's going to be amazing. What do you think? Like, I'm excited about it. And then we keep on going. So there's always a reason for everything, but never underestimate the power of educating anyone that you're photographing and doing what you're doing and why you're doing it. No different than buying a TV and you going to Best Buy or a shop, in your part of the world, and you're like, well, what TV do I buy? Well, what do you watch? Are you a gamer? Do you like sports? Do you like cinema? Well, this TV will be better for you for this reason, blah, 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 blah. And then you're educated, and now you might spend more money on that TV because you're educated about it. So, in other words, cover every ground, and there'll be things that you just miss because of inexperience. When I say inexperience, I haven't shot every type of wedding in the history of the world. So there'll be weddings that I approach, I'm like, you know what? I could have brought the best out of the couple a bit more, or myself, if I asked these questions. So that's why we talk about relationships. We talk about are there any problems in any things going on, family dynamics that are an issue that might affect my performance or yours, and so on. So I also go through timelines very, very methodically. Before people book me, I will tell them, not can you give me this, not will you give me this. You need to be ready 2 hours before you have to leave for the ceremony. Mm-hmm. You need to be ready an hour and a half before I leave for the groom's home to go to the bride's home, blah, blah, blah. It's not a conversation. And then the timeline comes back from the coordinator. I'm like, this is not right. And Melissa will get on the phone. I'm like, hey, arrange a call. I get on the call. I say, you are the bosses. The coordinator is just getting paid. She is not the boss, or he is not the boss. You are the boss. You are paying them. I'm telling you, this timeline is challenging. I can work with it. But if you're booking me for what you've seen in my albums and my website, I need the time that I need to bring out the best in you and me. I'm not in the habit of only meeting your expectations. I want to exceed them. To do that, I need this amount of time. And I pegged them back. That happened twice last week. Twice. And it is what it is. So just remember, what questions can I ask before the wedding that will minimise these kind of problems? What problems have I had in the past that I can prevent by simply asking or educating the particular couple that we're dealing with? I say, mum and dad still with us? Hashtag, are they alive? Then I'm like, are they together? And then if not, I'll say, are they remarried? Have they got a new partner? And then I might say, they've got a boyfriend. Like, do we treat him or her as a dad or as a father figure? No, just a boyfriend. They're remarried a long time ago. We've got kids together, blah, blah, blah. So there's all these relationships. And I always, are they on speaking terms? There's a little checkbox, yes or no. So now I know who to put where and why, and there's never an issue. If you look at these kinds of weddings, I think there was some dynamics here that I had to, I think they were divorced, but I'm like, are they on speaking terms? Yes. But we've got mum on one side, dad on the other. But I would never put them together. We have a product called the Wedding Works, which is administrative workflow for professional wedding photographers. Or you can create your own. It's basically just a form with fields. And often I just handwrite it. I'm like, hey, let me find out about your parents. Are they alive? Are they are they divorced? Are they got a new partner? Are they on speaking terms? Do you have grandparents still with us? Blah, blah, blah. Do you have siblings? Do they have spouses? Do they have kids? All of a sudden, I'm like, is there any dynamics in your family or friends that are problematic that you need to tell me now? Otherwise, it'd be a problem for both of us on the wedding day. Yeah, you know what? My brother has this girlfriend. She's a little bit of a bitch. And, he was the best man. She was the best man's girlfriend. And there's a bit funny things going on. Just be careful on how you handle that thing. I'm like, take all these notes down. And then as you're photographing the wedding, you keep it in your mind and you make sure that, you keep yourself honest if you're shooting on your own, or if you have an assistant, better them to help you than second shoot and say, hey, make sure we don't get these people in the same shot or together or whatever it may be. All of us learn that way. We make the mistake, or we get confronted with something that we'd never confronted before and like, oh, you know what? Yes. So just to go further, ask deeper questions. Are they on speaking terms? Are they still with us? Are the grandparents still with us? Put all the spouses and kids, are they going to be present, and so on and so forth. And that'll be it. But again, looking at these shots, you'll see, the different full length. She's a plus size bride, so we softened her. We hid one arm with the veil, one arm right behind her, and so on and so forth. So I didn't have much time with these guys because I had the time before the wedding, after the reveal and before the ceremony. This is my different full length. This is my different groom shot. Does that make sense? Different close up. Just a shadow, And again, you can sort of see how I'm always maximizing. Bring the guy in, take the guy. Bring the bride, take the couple. Take the first person out, keep on taking that shot. Maybe keep them there, bring the bridal party in. In other words, there's always like this symphony, and we're always bridging the gap between all these little different things. All right, baby, can we talk about reception coverages and talk about it in its entirety? Yeah.
We've actually broken it down into whether you're doing the full reception or you're just doing a shorter coverage. So it depends on how you have your collections based out. Some of us will only do the entire reception, or it may be that you have several different options where you do just the formalities kind of thing. So anyways, let's talk about it as if we were going to be doing the whole reception. So of course, the very first thing that you want to do is you want to get details from the reception. And the key here is trying to get those done as early as you possibly can. Because once everyone gets in the room and sits down, we all know that those details they all get messed up, and then you don't really see them in their pristine form. And as much as Jerry hates doing the detail shots because he thinks there's no meaning to them. We still have to do them because we all know our clients will absolutely want them. So do the detail shots, the centerpieces, the everything that they've spent money on basically at the reception. Then of course you get the cake that you want to make sure that you get, and then the formalities. So as the bride and groom walks into the room, you want to get that. If the wedding party is walking in with them, make sure you want to get them as well. And then all the normal formalities. You have the bride and groom toasting, doing their toast, the bride and groom doing their first dance, and you want to make sure that you get a variety of those shots during doing the first dance, whether it's a full length, it's a wide shot with all the guests in the background, close up of them so you can get the emotion. So you want to get a variety, and typically you'll have a little bit of time to get all of those shots. Then if they have do the parent dances, you want to make sure you get the parent dances, of course. Sometimes you'll get the moment when the bride and groom will open the dance floor, but they'll ask their bridal party to come in, so that's when you want to get each couple that's dancing on the dance floor, you want to capture that as well. And then of course just general candids throughout the night. After that we have later in the evening, if they're doing a garter toss, bouquet toss, you want to make sure you get that. If you're staying till the very end, then you want to make sure that you get them walking out. And the most important thing here to forget, which many of us don't do, is you want to have a way to finish off the album. So remember, we're always shooting for the album. So you have that opening spread, which is usually something really beautiful, and that's what their name and the date might be. But then you also need to finish with a wow. So you need to start with a wow and finish with a wow. And if you can't really finish with the shot that was taken on locations when it was in the middle of a sunny day, in the middle of the afternoon, because it doesn't really go with the flow of the timeline. So you want something that's maybe a little bit more dramatic, that could have been taken later in the day, at night, or that kind of thing. Even if you have to pull them out of the reception for just 5 minutes to get 1 or 2 shots that you can just use as that final spread, you want to make sure that you do that.
So, as Melissa was talking, of course, I was showing the photographs that sort of relate to it. At the end of the day, guys, with receptions, it's not rocket science. If there's a story moment, if it moves, shoot it. So, you know what I mean? But shoot every action. When in doubt, just photograph it. So every person walking in the reception venue, them cutting the cake, maybe just not the one cutting the cake from the front, go from behind them and shoot what they're seeing. With speeches, it's not just the person doing the speech, it's basically maybe the person doing the speech with them in the background, who they're speaking to, the bride and groom, whatever it may be. It could be also the reactions to the speeches. So if we go here, this is just a bread and butter, like you would say, wedding in a sense, that, there's a different kind of cake shot. Normally we just go close, but I thought this guy looks really creepy. Candles looking really good. I like to have detail shots with a bit of emotion and feeling, but I like to do it. See, these mean nothing to me. I would rather see them in the environment that they're in. In other words, as we start, okay, so he's doing a speech, so the best man. So I'm just using ambient light here, then ushering everyone in. Now, by the way, that's the ice light, but I did not set that up. That was the filmmaker. So it's always fun to have a filmmaker who's using an ice light and they have no idea who I am, which is awesome. So then I changed my angle because that was distracting, and then I got all the bridal party. So you see how it's not just the bride and groom, you're getting everyone walking in. And then again, you can get some great reactions. I love that one, isn't that beautiful? Yeah. So you can sort of see how this is all photojournalistic, right? So cutting the cake, it's a different action. But you would see how, why would you put the cake on its own in the album where you could put the album with the couple laughing and giggling with it? So the reason why Melissa was alluding to the fact that I don't like doing detail shots is because I'd rather photograph the family, even if they're waiting in the back room. Now you might say, we'll have a second shooter. I'm like, well, yeah, we can do that too. But, again, I'd rather, there's the detail, I can see it, no shit, it's already there. There's the father, back to the couple, back to the father, back to the couple, back to the father. I show more ambience. I'm actually showing a bit more atmosphere. I'm showing context. Then going back to the couple. So I'm showing you this as individual images rather than the thumbnails to actually give you a vision of what I'm doing. I'm not a lazy shooter. There's this, there's this, there's this, there's this, there's this. So now now I've done so many shots of the father, but isn't this a better shot showing off the whole reception venue? Again, why would I show an empty version of it when you can show something like this? But then I go around the couple, and now I'm shooting what they're seeing. So you get the story. There's the wife. A different angle of the bride. This is still the father's speech. And then, because I know he was quite fun, I knew that he would give them a big sloppy kiss at the end as well. So again, every action warrants another photograph. Now this father. So now, even though that this speech was longer, I have to give him the similar respect. So first I nail the shot on his own, then I get the reaction. Maybe I go wider like I did before with the other father. Then I'm getting other reactions. Then I'm doing a similar shot of the father that I did with the other father. And then I'm getting his wife. Then their reactions. You see how it's a back and forth. I've got boys, I've got girls. Like no one can say, where is this shot? Where's the atmosphere? Where is this moment? Well, it's all there. And how do I know this? Because I did enough weddings where I didn't get this right. And this is a lower angle and so on. And that's just the thing. See, I'm teaching you just facts and knowledge, but wisdom you just have to live. And that's by getting it wrong and getting your ass kicked by a couple who are saying, well, where's this shot? Well, you know what? Yeah, you're right. It's my fault. I just wasn't there, or I didn't know about it, or I didn't understand that tradition, or I wasn't quick enough to do that. I know some speeches last for about 5 seconds. So take the speech, go get the reaction, go wider, and then I've covered myself. So see how I've taken all these different angles, and now I'm actually shooting from a different perspective. But I'm getting all the detail in different ways. Coming back to the girl. Then I just stand up, take a shot, come back again. And now I'm like, you know what? I haven't done a shot from the person who did the speeches angle. So you open yourself up to a whole new way of shooting if you start looking for those moments. And it goes on and on and on. And then I'm like, all right, they held hands, beautiful. Wait a second, I can shoot through the flowers and get the holding of the hands. I can get their faces in their hands and so on. So it's just constantly looking for different things. And you know what? I quite like the little speckle and that little bokeh effect of the dress and all that kind of stuff. So I just kept on shooting. And then it was like, all right, they've done the speeches. Let's get them out. Now, I think yeah, we grabbed her out really quickly, but then we had to go back in again. All right, at least I nailed 3 shots of the bride. Come back in again. Then the groom does his speech and so on, and then we do the dancing and all those different things. Now, he requested a cigar shot because people know me for these shots, and even though I'm getting a bit tired of them, but the guys love them. So there's a couple of ice lights, we take the shots, and now we've added extra value. Perhaps we've got another spread in the wedding album. But you see, though, that there are plenty of shots that represent the reception. This one is probably more of a traditional one in the sense that it's a big, wide location. There was lots of detail shots, so we went from there to there, you know, all that stuff. This is all obvious stuff to shoot. And if someone asks for a photograph, you take it, no question. And this was basically like a pre-smorgasbord before the dinner. So I'm like, wow, that's really fun. Then they all walk in, so I take these shots. And by the way, these were all taken with one on-camera flash. No. Many people that will just bring external lighting and all that kind of stuff, and I'm like, well, why when you can get that result in camera with one on-camera flash? And there's sometimes we don't use any flash at all because we're using the ambience that's already there. So dancing shots, speech shots, there's jazz drinking, of course. You know, the priest, it's the sister, the reactions, but you can sort of see how I'm constantly moving, getting all those reactions and obviously working with the existing light sometimes, adding a bit of flash sometimes, getting the reactions of everybody. So you just have to be observant. With all these photographs, it's just a different action. With dancing shots, you run in, you jump in the crowd, and you just fire away. And after a while, you'll do so many of them, as you can see here, that you've nailed everything. And of course, the cake cutting happens. And why the sword? I have no idea. But it is what it is.
Cake's all big.
Yeah. And then every so often, always be available for any shots that people want from you. That's the golden rule. If anyone wants anything, nothing is a problem. and then you just keep on playing. So again, if it moves, shoot it. And of course, you know, this one, I think for the album, we trimmed away the hairs. Or actually, I think we cropped in just here, actually. This is just too much. I normally take the veil off, but it was like, but that's something that was all dead and all that kind of thing. But we just have to consistently be looking out for shots. So this couple, for example, we had done those location portraits. We kept on going, you know, different full length. You know, different full length. I love this one, just, you know, a different full length. We did that in black and white, looked incredible actually. And then when it comes to the reception, same stuff. Let me come back. So this was more outdoors, so we basically got them walking in individually. Then they had their first dance. And again, every different perspective. And I'm like, I need a shot to finish off this album. Let me wait, the sunset's going, let me quickly take this shot. So we did that. I'm like, all right, I've nailed another hero shot, fantastic. And then we ended up doing all of these photographs, again with one on-camera flash. And I'm like, guys, the location's amazing. I know you want to go back to the hotel and do whatever, but it's important that, how about we finish up with another couple of spreads? And that's it. It works out really well. So ultimately, for reception, night shots, this is what I call night shots after the reception. It's not always applicable to do it because they're tired or they're hungry, they're thirsty, or they just want to go and, you know, do their thing. What I have on this particular list, I might go through it, baby, if that's cool with you. Save some time. Reminders, if you're shooting with 2 or more cameras, sync the time and date before the wedding. That's pretty obvious, but some people just don't think of that. And if you don't do it, you can put it in a program like Photo Mechanic and actually reset every photograph. You just find one photograph that's actually a similar time zone of where you took the other angle, and then you can redo the time and date rather than trying to friggin' put it in manually. So just, obviously, that's sort of quite obvious stuff. Charge plenty of batteries the night before, we know that. Look for detail shots, still life, even though I don't like them, go for it. Shoot any requests, happily. Take 2 shots of anything important, okay, so in terms of blinks. Take at least 2 shots when the subjects are looking in the camera, 4 people or less. Take at least 3 shots when subjects are looking in the camera, 5 people or more. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So, you know, don't overshoot. It's a big one. Too many people just overshoot. I take my time, I slow down, look for panoramic opportunities. So in other words, look for shots that, you know, like that can be cropped and they can go across 2 spreads. Even this one's a bit wider, they can go across 2 spreads, and so on and so forth. And you'll sort of see that from time to time where, actually, in fact, that sunset shot's a perfect example of that notion. You see how that's my original vision for that photograph, but I'm like, well, let me go a little bit further if in case I need more width and more span. Focus, focus, focus. I think it's a big problem for most photographers. Some people, they don't know their handheld safe speed. Yeah. Textbooks will tell you 125 or whatever. I'm usually, these days in my career, 200, 250. I just find with the big lenses that we're all using and all that kind of stuff, and also if you're animated when you shoot and you giggle and you laugh, like you do that at 60th of a second, yeah, you'll get them out of focus. So either get a tripod or a monopod or hold your breath, breathe in, bring your shoulders in, your elbows in, and then photograph. If you don't have a tripod and you're photographing, you need to photograph a shot at half a second or quarter of a second or 1/8 of a second, 30th of a second, then again, lean up against the tree, breathe in, put your elbows in, and take 3, 4 shots in a row, continuous high. The shot in the middle will be pretty good, if you had to do that. Of course, now with most camera systems, you can crank it up to like 10,000 ISO and you're still doing it really well. Shoot for the wedding album, design the pages as you shoot. We've talked about that in many other episodes. Tell the story, explore relationships, what's meaningful. Don't leave the wedding until you have a well-rounded album and at least a couple of wow shots. Slow down, take your time. These reminders I would give to my photographers when I had a very large studio and I would contract my weddings out. Like they're my staff wedding photographers. But if you're going out, a lot of what I'm saying here is quite elementary, but for those who haven't been taught or haven't actually learnt what those do or die shots, you may actually not know. And to be honest, your couples might be unsophisticated and they don't know to expect them. If you approach a couple or a family that it actually expects what they should expect, which is a well-rounded story and all these obvious things, maybe this is just a bit of a reminder for you, keeping you honest. Don't be lazy and take responsibility even if it's actually not your fault. But ultimately, guys, like for me, if I was the governor of wedding photography and you had to come through my desk before you became a wedding photographer, I would get you to pass a series of tests of what those do or die shots are, and before you got a license to photograph a wedding. So if it was me, you would get a license you'd have to have a license to photograph, certain events and stories and things like that. So when all else fails, as I taught you, my very first boss, I think one of the biggest lessons he gave me was a crappy shot is better than no shot. So just get it done. We have to shoot for flattery, make people look and feel good. Story, obviously story-driven. Things that people have spent money on, what's meaningful, we're shooting to sell. And if you take all that into account, you shouldn't miss a thing. And if you don't understand the culture, like I said, if it moves, shoot it. Thank you so much, guys. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.